Are kwale mahlo. Modimo ntate, Modimo wa rona ka lebaka la morena Jesu. Re isa hlompho tlotla le kganya le poko ho wena ka lebaka la mpho yeo re fileng yona. Ho nkile wena pele lefatshe le thewa hore o hlole motho o ileng wa nahana hore ka nako yena o tla mo dispatcha ka nako eo batho ba nahanang hore o expireile. Wena o tla mo dispatcha hore Modimo a ka tlo hlahisa ntho e ntjha e sokang e ba teng. Itse ha sa dutse hae Modimo. E le ntate mo le a tshwanetseng hore a shebane le ditloholo tsa hae. Wena wa mo hopotsa hore o santse o na le bana ba ka ba tlangweng Egepeta ka hara South Africa. Yaba wa mo roma jwalo ka moshi hore a kgutlele moo no kileng wa mo hodisetsa teng, hore a ilo lata bana ba hao a ba ise tokolohong ya bona. Modimo wa ka, ho bobebe ho ntsha motho ka hara ntho, empa ho thata ho ntsha ntho ka hara motho. Jwale Modimo wa ka ya lokileng, it was easy for you to release the children of Israel out of Egypt, but it was difficult for you to take Egypt out of them. Le rona ho na le mo re tswang teng. Ho thata ho ntsha mekgwa le ditlwaelo tse ne re na le tsona mo re tswang teng. Empa Modimo re hauhele. Matlafatsa baetapele ba rona. Matlafatsa Ntate Zuma. Matlafatsa High Command, National High Command ya rona, Provincial High Command ya rona. Le bohle Modimo wa ka protocol kaofela. E matlafatse o ife masene, o ife bohlale, o bo ba fele sebete, baske ba tshaba o correcta, baske ba tshaba o khalema, baske ba tshaba o ruta ka toka le ka nnete. Lebitsong la Kriste Jesu mrena re a leboha. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Bishop. Siyabonga kakhulu. We actually do need a prayer. We do need prayers. Thank you very much, Bishop. Commanders, as it was communicated that we shall be having an interface wherein all of us shall emerge from this house being empowered, capacitated. We are going to get the free political education. So beyond the presentations that shall be addressed to you, we definitely going to emerge empowered and capacitated. I am then not going to waste much of our time. Let me note you. Yes, you may talk. I order, but it is not coming from this table. It is that this table that is having. No, it's fine. Thank you. I am then going to hand over this session to our Secretary General. But before I give him this, I want us to usher him in with this song. Uzuma wayekhona emzabalazwe. Uzuma wayekhona emzabalazwe. 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 Uzuma ukhona emzabalazwe. Uzuma wayekhona emzabalazwe. Emzabalazwe. Imzabalazwe. Amandla. Amandla. Over to you, SG.
Amandla. Amandla. Gwaza mkonto gwaza. Gwaza mkonto gwaza. Jigijela mkonto jigijela. Jigijela mkonto jigijela. Long live President Jacob Zuma, long live. Long live President Jacob Zuma, long live. Forward to total emancipation, forward. Forward to total freedom, forward. Amandla. Away to. No, thank you very much, Deputy Secretary General of Mkonto Wesizwe, Commander Nombuso Mkize, the National Organizer, Commander Joe Ndlela, the member of the National High Command, Ludali Bello, who is also the convener of deployees here in the province of Gauteng, Archbishop Zondo, who is always with us, the leadership of the provinces of Gauteng, of Northwest of the Free State. So we have called this meeting to go through a common process. We're going to read the constitution and foundational documents of Mkonto Wesizwe together. That is in the, before we identify and give rules to the leadership structures of Gauteng. We also want to acknowledge that in our presence we have the leadership of the MK Women's League and the Youth League, and they are the structures that they got to identify and appoint in the province of Gauteng. So at the end of this engagement today, we are going to designate the roles of, I realize that I've missed members of the National High Command, Commander General Daisy Chiloane and General Sindisiwe Mthembu. So at the end of this process, we are going to then explain the roles which the different commanders, comrades will be playing in the regional detachments, the top 8 of the regional detachments of Gauteng province. So we got delayed today because earlier we were meeting with all the interim structures that existed in the province of Gauteng. So we actually conveyed the gratitude and say thank you to all those comrades that have played a role thus far. I think even ourselves, let's give them a round of applause for the work that they've done. Because despite the so many doubts that existed about Mkonto Wesizwe, the Gauteng Corps played a very important role, because for an organization that was barely 6 months to achieve a commendable result is quite commendable itself, in terms of, under difficult circumstances, organized a rally in Orlando Stadium and had a clear campaign that showed that there is huge potential for the organization. And an obvious issue is that those of you who are now taking the baton from those comrades, those commanders, you must quadruple the efforts of those comrades. To quadruple is to multiply by 4. It's not to double. You must multiply by 4 what those comrades they got to do. Now, comrades, it would have been tragic if we could just designate you to roles of leadership in the province and in regions without having read the constitution of Mkonto Wesizwe together. Can I confirm that all of us have got copies of the constitution? So we have to read this perspective together so that we all have a common understanding of just who we are as an organization and what do we seek to achieve, and how do we get to where we want to be. So we're going to go very patiently in terms of educating ourselves and understanding just what we need to do. So you realize that the Constitution, if there's a person who's looking for a Constitution there, let's give a copy. There are copies for everyone, comrades, they will bring to you. So you realize that in the Constitution of Umkhonto weSizwe, outside of the contextualization of the statement of President Jacob Zuma on the 16th of December 2023, the quotes that recur recurrently in the Constitution of Umkhonto weSizwe is a quote by Amilcar Cabral. What will explain the context of what it says. But Amilcar Cabral says something very important just before we get to the Constitution. He says, in the process of building a political party, we must always educate ourselves. He says, educate ourselves, educate other people. We must educate the population in general. We must fight the fear of ignorance. We must fight ignorance in all its manifestations. And then we must eliminate little by little the subjection to nature and natural forces which our economy has yet not mastered. So every time we gather as Umkhonto weSizwe, whatever gathering of Umkhonto weSizwe must be a political school of Umkhonto weSizwe. So you can't go to a meeting of Umkhonto weSizwe and then you come out of that meeting and still having the same knowledge levels as you did before you went there. So if you go to a meeting which is called in the name of Umkhonto weSizwe, and your levels of understanding are the same as before you went to the meeting, you are in a wrong meeting. So that is how a revolution gets to be conducted. That a simple task of all of us as revolutionaries, as activists, as leaders, is to reproduce ourselves, is to ideologically and politically reproduce ourselves. So we must be able to persuade as many people as possible to see the things that we understand as a movement. Now the Constitution of Umkhonto weSizwe, as is written on the cover page, was adopted by the National High Command, which we are going to explain is the highest decision-making body in the organization Umkhonto weSizwe Party. It was adopted on the 26th of September 2024. That was after several deliberations. Actually, in the last meeting of the national officials, the president was giving us a very clear history of the constitutions of Umkhonto weSizwe, including the draft ones that were presented in 2024. And then he explained the uniqueness of this constitution. Of course, there might be templates that you would learn from in terms of how a constitution is written. But the constitution of Umkhonto weSizwe is a unique constitution. It's not similar to the ANC constitution, it's not similar to the EFF constitution, it's not similar to IFP constitution, it's not similar to any other constitution. It has got unique features because Umkhonto weSizwe is a unique liberation movement, an organization that is fighting for total freedom. So it was adopted on the 26th of September. I think all of us should note that we're doing this didactic and simplified presentation so that all of us are able to go and do the same thing when we go to the ground. Are we together, comrades? And the Constitution has got 12 sections. So the first section of the Constitution gives the name of the organization. The second section explains the colors, logos of the organization. The third section speaks to the aims and objectives of the organization. Section 4 speaks to the values and principles of the organization. Section 5A speaks to membership in general as to what constitutes the membership of Umkhonto weSizwe. Section 5B speaks to the duties and obligations of members. Section 6 speaks to rights of members. Section 7 is the longest structure that speaks to organizational leadership and structures of Umkhonto weSizwe. Then Section 8 establishes the MK Women's League. Section 9, MK Youth League. Section 10, MK Students Movement. And then Section 11, Disciplinary Code. And then this last section speaks to constitutional amendment. That is what, but before all those sections are outlined, there is a preamble in the Constitution of Umkhonto weSizwe. The preamble speaks to the politics, the ideological character, nature, and form of our organization. What does the preamble do? What does the preamble of Umkhonto weSizwe do? It first locates politically as to where do we come from as a people. And how it answers that question, you'll get to realize it's very interesting. It asks a question of where as a people do we come from? Where are we now? Why are we where we are? And what do we do to save ourselves from the situation that we're in? And who are we as a movement? And now in responding to the question of where do we come from as a people, it's just the first sentence in the preamble of the Constitution that says that we, the indigenous people of the African continent and all people of African ancestry all over the world share the common scars of slavery, colonization, and colonialism, which dispossessed us of our land, natural and economic resources, dignity, heritage, culture, languages, and identity. That since the beginning of slavery and colonialism, all people of African ancestry continue to be on the margins of mainstream economic and social participation and relevance. What that means in simple terms is that all people who look like me and you have, since the beginning of slavery and colonialism, been conquered by the world racist system that subjected us to slavery and colonialism, that first refused to acknowledge us as human beings. Do you know why most black people were not allowed to vote all over the world, even in the countries which they were majority? It's because those who were in charge of society did not recognize them as human beings. So the history that we come from is a history of oppression and colonialism, so that is discussed, and that reality, since its beginning of slavery and colonialism, has not yet disappeared. It has taken so many battles. There have been so many battles to fight against the fact that we are a defeated people, but we are a conquered people, but we have not yet won the war. Are we together, comrades? So in a war you can have different battles, and war can wage for many years, can go on for centuries, can go for decades. But in the war for our own dignity as black people, as Africans in particular, we have not yet won the war. And we say all people of African ancestry all over the world. So wherever people who look like me and you are found, wherever they are found, they are treated as subhuman. They are suppliers of cheap and easily disposable labor everywhere in the world. This includes in the United States of America. In the United States of America, you have got possibly 40 to 50 million people of African ancestry, black people. So if you were to go and take those black people out, all of them, and then gauge them in terms of levels of literacy, employment, imprisonment, all of those things, they're like an African country that is stuck within the belly of America. They live in more or less the same conditions as we do. They're the ones who are informal settlement dwellers there in America, majority of them. if you go to Brazil, which has got the second largest black population in the world, so Brazil has got the second largest black population of people of African ancestry in the world after Nigeria. The people who look like me and you are still under oppression. So we locate the struggles for our total emancipation from that angle. And then the emphasis is that in South Africa, the black majority and indigenous people were subjected to centuries of colonialism and apartheid, which was manifested through the combination of political, economic, social, spatial, cultural, and knowledge ideology and apartheid oppression. What that means is that, you know, apartheid existed in different forms, comrades. Apartheid and colonialism, where one, it was political exclusion, that black people were not allowed to vote and be voted for before 1994 in South Africa. Since the beginning of humanity, there was never a time for the governance. So since the beginning, let's maybe be recent in terms of historicization. Since the beginning of this union of South Africa, black people were not allowed to participate in elections to elect a national government until the year 1994. So we had political apartheid, which was clear that black people cannot be voting, they cannot be voted. But also you had systematic and systemic social apartheid, which was expressed through racism. So racism was institutionalized under colonialism and apartheid. In the workplaces, in everywhere, in all facets of society, white people were born and bred to accept that black people are inferior. And black people were, you know, like, so you can imagine white children, majority of who grew up in South Africa, the first time they come into contact with a black person is as a maid who sleeps in a back room at home, as a gardener, who cannot be respected. That is what, it's a helper of white people. That is the systemization of racism. And you would think that such a white person will grow to be an adult who will respect any black person anyway. So apartheid was political, was a social systemic racism as well in the whole of society, even in workplaces. Do you know, under apartheid, even for the same job, you cannot be paid the same salary as a white person. It was not allowed. The law was saying a white person must get a higher salary than a black person. But also apartheid was spatial as in space. That black people were staying in the congested townships and very distant, infertile hinterlands and rural areas, when white people chose the best of the lands of South Africa. So that is what we had to deal with. But also apartheid was in terms of knowledge. So those who Englishicize a lot, they say, you had something called epistemic apartheid and colonialism, where the knowledge systems as a whole denigrated and did not add any value to black people's knowledge systems and understandings. But apartheid was cultural as well, that the cultural practices and norms of black people under apartheid and colonialism, we still are living, by the way, I'm talking about all of these things which we still have as part of where we are now. Culturally, all of us were meant to aspire for whiteness. So speaking better English, you are seen as much more cleverer. Black people even were under pressure to want to physically look like white people, because that is the pressure that the lighter the skin was sometimes confused with being more beautiful. That is basically what apartheid got to instill in our system, that we got to despise our own skin color and culture and nature as a people. Then there, of course, were so many battles of resistance against colonialism. Back-to-back battles against colonialism in the wars of resistance that happened where the Xhosa, the Zulu were defeated. The only battle, by the way, which was won by the black people was the Battle of Isandlwana, led by Inkosi Cetwayo. And the reason why that battle was won is because the Zulu army that time far outnumbered the colonial British army and fought as a unit. But almost all other battles, even when they got to reinforce in what was called the Battle of Ulundi, the British prevailed. Even Bambata, with the Bambata rebellion, they suppressed him and killed him and went to parade his head on the streets that would have killed your king, Bambata. But all other battles, majority of the battles that we fought in the resistance of colonialism, we were defeated because the British colonial settlers and Afrikaners had superior superpower in terms of guns and bombs. So since our defeat, we have not yet won back the battle, because that defeat is what took away our land, took away our dignity, our identity, our beingness in terms of where we come from. We locate this issue from that battle. And part of the battles to resist colonialism and apartheid was an attempt now by traditional leaders, by religious leaders, by the black intellectuals to try to unify all forms of black resistance against colonialism through the formation of the South African Natives National Congress, which later on became the ANC. But there's something which this constitution in the preamble emphasizes, that the reason why we got to be defeated, all of us, as black people and Africans in particular, who, when the colonial invaders came, we were more than 95%, 96% of the population, but we were defeated. Why? Because we fought in different isolated battles. There was never a time in the war of resistance where we fought collectively together against colonialism and colonial settlers. So there is never a time, General Daisy, where Amazulu and fought side by side in a unified form against colonial settlers. That is why when the Union of South Africa, like the British took over our land, they took over everything. Alongside the Afrikaners, they did then the 4 republics, Transvaal, Cape, Natal, Orange River Colony. When they formed the Union of South Africa in 1910, after they had fought amongst themselves in what was called the Anglo-Boer War, where a lot of black people died, by the way, in the so-called Anglo-Boer War. A lot of black people were donated to fight on either side. Once they united to form the Union of South Africa, it was only after then where traditional leaders, religious leaders, and the intellectuals, the black intellectuals, said that we perhaps need to form a unified political resistance to colonialism and the whites-only government and state. That is why the South African Natives National Congress, the ANC, was founded on the 8th of January 1912. You can understand that 1910 is when the Union of South Africa is launched, And then they tried to organize conference. They couldn't get a proper date in the whole of 1911. And then they say that when January starts in 1912, whichever first weekend, we're gathering. We've been talking about these things for a very long time. And then they gathered and they formed that organization with an understanding that it must be an organization that represents the interest of all black people. So, you know, if we check the constitution of the South African Natives National Congress, 1912, Commander Luther, it had a National Executive Committee, but above the National Executive Committee, it had a Council of Elders, which were Amakosi and senior religious leaders. You'll see the similarity with the Council of Religious and Traditional Leaders in the constitution of Umkhonto weSizwe, the party. We'll talk about that. So the preamble basically locates where we come from and emphasizes the simple fact that despite the so many battles that were fought, we are still living under neo-colonialism. That we could have gained, we fought for political power, we gained political power. Even that political power that we got is not complete. How do you know that political power is not complete? Is that some decisions that you take have to be approved elsewhere. So President Zuma will tell you, I don't know what's happening now. So even the political power which was gained after years and years of struggle against apartheid was not total political freedom. So President Zuma will tell you that there are so many decisions which he would have taken and he took, and then he was told that you can't take such a decision. But also even the manner in which the politics of South Africa is designed is that even if 100% of the elected political leadership were to take a decision, the laws of South Africa still permit that some 11 men and gentlemen who stay here in Bramfontein can change the decisions of the political leadership. The Constitutional Court can overturn a majority decision of the political leadership. So there is no total political freedom in South Africa. There is no economic freedom in South Africa. There is no economic emancipation in South Africa. And to see that is very simple. Land ownership, the control and ownership of the mineral resources, the control of the economy. There is not a single black person who owns a chain store in South Africa. There's not a single black person who has got a mega financial institution. If we get involved in the economy, it's very small stores which are not sustainable. We are spectators in our own, and 90% of the income that we earn out of our hard labor goes back to white people because we buy from their stores everything. We're not in control of the economy. So we don't have total political freedom. We don't have total economic freedom. We don't have economic freedom at all. We don't have social freedom because the racism persists. We don't have cultural emancipation because the cultural domination of the white minority is still a reality. We don't have control over the knowledge systems. We don't have control over the knowledge systems because we're still taught whiteness in our schools and universities of technology. That is where we are. And Umkhonto weSizwe then says, our aim is to fight now for total political, economic, social, cultural knowledge, emancipation, and freedom. That is total freedom. Do you know, before the arrival of colonialists, there was systems of governance in South Africa. There were traditional leaders which had the role to play. But in the so-called political freedom that we have, traditional leaders do not have any role to play at all. At national level, they've got something called the National Council of Traditional Leaders, the National House of Traditional Leaders. It's a talk shop where they go and gather in Cape Town to talk. Whatever they talk and resolve them means absolutely nothing in the design of the current government. So our being, our existence, our reason for existence as a people is under the phenomena, the reality of neo-colonialism, the new colonialism, which is just the continuation of colonialism under a different form. And we will know that as part of this journey, let me just explain this thing I was trying to explain earlier, that we have not won the war. Battles can get won sometimes there. So the war started with those who resisted, those who arrived to settle in 1652. Actually, even earlier than that, there was an attempt in the 1400s by the Portuguese to colonize this part of South Africa, and they were defeated. So the war began that time. In the 1600s, all those who are still in the same war. Political parties are formed. The ANC is formed as the South African Natives National Congress is formed. It's part of the war. It gets banned. When it gets banned, then the activists that time say, no, what do we do with the fact that now formal political organizations are banned from existence? Then Umkhonto weSizwe, the Liberation Army, was formed and officially announced on the 16th of December 1961. So in the constitution of Umkhonto weSizwe, we say that as with the leaflet on page 3, as with the leaflet announcing the formation of Umkhonto weSizwe in December 16, 1961, after the banning and illegalization of liberation movements by the white minority racist apartheid regime, we then say that the statement made by President Jacob Zuma on the 16th of December 2023 is a signal of our refusal to surrender in the struggle against colonialism. So Umkhonto weSizwe the party, so there's Umkhonto weSizwe the Liberation Army, and we are Umkhonto weSizwe the party. We draw direct inspiration from Umkhonto weSizwe the Liberation Army. It's not a secret about that. That is why we share the same birth date with Umkhonto weSizwe the Army. 16 December is the birth date of Umkhonto weSizwe the party. That we represent the refusal to surrender the struggle for total emancipation, because in our fair and common analysis is that the vehicles and instruments that were supposed to fight for total freedom and emancipation have been totally captured and taken over by the handlers, by the neo-colonial masters. There is nothing revolutionary that is going to change the lives of our people that is happening in the other formations other than what we are talking about here, which is Umkhonto weSizwe. And then what then becomes our character as a movement? On page 5, the last paragraph, it says that Umkhonto weSizwe is therefore a political movement that seeks to unite. You know, the word unite and unity in the constitution of Umkhonto weSizwe is the most commonly used name, and the most commonly used word. Mkhonto weSizwe Party is therefore a political movement that seeks to unite all the anti-colonial, anti-apartheid, and anti-imperialist progressive forces to continue and to complete the unfinished fight for total liberation and freedom. That is what Mkhonto weSizwe is, that we have been fighting for a very long time. We have not yet gained total freedom. So let's unite everyone else to continue the struggle. It's aluta continue. That is what they say. That is what it is that we're fighting on. No surrender and no retreat. And what is emphasized in terms of unification of all the progressive forces is that we need to put unity at the center of our struggles. Unity in the organization and unification of all other forces. Do you know, in the discussion, very intense discussion of this aspect, President Zuma says that you can go and gather a committee of 5 people each or 10 people each, those who say that they are from the Congress movement, like, who are associated with the ANC, black people, and then those who say they are from the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania, and those who say they are from the Black Consciousness movement, and then those who say they associate with economic freedom in our lifetime. You lock them in a room for a day and say, please tell us what are the 10 priority issues that we must deal with as black people. They're going to come with the same solutions. And they will identify the same problems. We are defined by the same problems. And we have got the same solutions, that we need to reclaim our land. We need to reclaim our dignity. Why do we now want to organize into different, multiple, and viable options? Because you want to emphasize the black consciousness character of our struggle. You want to form a whole organization. And so, no, because I'm black conscious, I want to fight on this side by myself. If you believe in economic freedom, you say, I want to fight for economic freedom by myself. If you are believing in Pan-Africanism, I want to fight with Pan-Africanism by myself. President Zuma says, let's unite all these streams and form one organization. Let's have the unification of all these progressive black ideologies and ideological framework to form one liberation movement that is going to fight for total emancipation. That is Mkhonto weSizwe. There is nothing reactionary about black consciousness. There is nothing reactionary about Pan-Africanism. There is nothing reactionary about the struggle for economic freedom in our lifetime. But why do we as black people want to exist and fight for all of these things in separate avenues? Aren't we subjecting ourselves to conquest like we were conquered under colonialism and colonial invasion, where we fight in our own small corners? Why do we have to have separate organizations to fight for a common cause? Because that is why Mkhonto weSizwe says we are fighting for total political, economic, social, cultural, and knowledge, emancipation and freedom. And we need all these ideological streams to guide us towards that victory. That is what Mkhonto weSizwe is all about. The former liberation movement, the ANC, reduced the struggle in all honesty to just the struggle to fight for political power and political freedom. They had a supposition that seek ye first political power and the rest shall follow. And they realized that after getting political power, the rest did not come. Were able to vote and be voted for, but remained landless, remained with no control of the economy, remained as slaves of white people, remains as cultural midgets of the white system. which criminalized and even got to bastardize everything else that was reflective of black people. By the way, there is very sound and effective traditional healing systems in South Africa and amongst black people in the African continent and in diaspora. But the white system got to club, they say, no, traditional healing is witchcraft. They even refer to traditional healers as witch doctors. I don't know how does it work. You are a witch and a doctor at the same time. That is how they got to bastardize everything. And scared us off out of our own identity. You know, they frightened us out of our own bodies, where we are not even proud of who we are as a people. We need this consciousness in a singular struggle to fight for total emancipation and freedom. And we, as we emphasize, are founded and inspired by the struggles of Mkhonto Wesizwe, the Liberation Army. Those who are in Mkhonto Wesizwe, the Liberation Army, know that the oath there you commit that you're going to fight with everything in your power, and you're also willing to die in pursuit of the struggle. And when you fight in the Liberation Army, you're not fighting for selfish interests. You are fighting for the people. And when you are fighting in a Liberation Army, you know that you don't just know how to use a firearm or gun, you must be politically conscientized as well. Because Thomas Sankara is correct in stating that a soldier without proper political and ideological training is a potential criminal. That is what Thomas Sankara says. So I think we have dealt with where we come from. Are we together, comrades? I think we are together as to just what are we doing as a movement. Now that we know what we are in pursuit of, now let's go to the Constitution, section by section. The Section 1 is the name of the organization, the name of the party, in page 9. The name of the party is Umkhonto Wesizwe. The name of the party is Umkhonto Wesizwe Party, abbreviated as MKPUMK. I'm going to explain this thing of party and movement later on. There's a very important emphasis that we have to make. Okay, so Umkhonto Wesizwe, in terms of this constitution, is a party that is leading a movement. So you will see that in the preamble, the emphasis is that Umkhonto Wesizwe Party is a political movement. Have you noticed that? Everywhere it says Umkhonto Wesizwe Party is a movement. There's a difference between a party and a movement. So Umkhonto Wesizwe Party is leading a movement of people who are fighting and structures that are going to fight for total emancipation and freedom. So it's the vanguard of a movement. Can I explain to you in ways that will be familiar in terms of what a movement will be? So you see, the ANC, the party, used to lead or leads or led a movement, a mass democratic movement or a national liberation movement. And what were the organizational expressions of the movement which the ANC, the party led? So in the movement, the mass democratic movement which the ANC led, you had a workers' unions, like COSATU with possibly 17 organizations underneath it. It was a SACTU before then. You had a women's organization which had national character. You had a youth organization which was national in character. You had students' organizations, the Congress of South African Students. Actually, all the organizations that had Congress were part of the mass democratic movement. So the Congress of South African Students, COSAS, South African Students Congress, SASCO, the Congress of the Traditional Leaders of South Africa, CONTRALES. So anything that had Congress, There was something called the South African Sports Congress as well. And you had something, I don't know if it still exists, South African National Civics Congress or SANCO. So all of those formations, and that is the mistake which many people got to not realize, that you contest against the ANC through a political party, you can't win. Because you're fighting against a movement. You think you're fighting against one organization that is got a head office there in Sour Street. But you're fighting against 23 organizations which are national in character and fully efficient. And in some instances, your own organization, which you are fighting with, is even smaller than one SATU, one union, with one attendant organization of a movement. So this party, the president of Mkondo's is Commander General Jacob Gedlesekisa Mhlanganyela Zuma. He says, comrades, don't ever dream and think that you can defeat a movement with a political party. So all of us who are leading anywhere, you must know that we are building a movement. Teusa, there are so many of those. We'll pay closer attention to them so that we have a movement. And that you must keep in your mind all the time, that we will never have an overwhelming victory of 2/3 if we think we're just going to fight through one instrument. So the party Umkhonto weSizwe is leading a total emancipation movement. That is who we are as a movement, and that is what we need to understand. So our conduct, how we deal with everything else, should come from that point of view. The name of the organization is Umkhonto weSizwe Party, but it's abbreviated as MKP or MK. Public representatives, leaders of Umkhonto weSizwe. So permissibly, when you speak on behalf of the MK, you can say as MK. You don't have to say the P. Actually, we encourage that every time we speak on behalf of Umkhonto weSizwe, we say as Umkhonto weSizwe, spokespeople. As Umkhonto weSizwe, this is our position. That is the essence of how we should articulate ourselves on each and every issue. The colors, logos, and flags of the organization is section 2, still on page 9. The colors of the organization shall be green, black, and gold. So this color which surrounds the logo, this color of the spear is gold, is not yellow. So yellow is the colors which are worn by a team which used to come from Mamelodi. Sundowns is gold, is yellow, that one, it's not gold. I suspect the color which General CDC is very yellow. So this color is gold, so the colors of Umkhonto weSizwe shall be green, black, and the green is supposed to be the military green, because I know sometimes there's a temptation to use green, which is not necessarily green. Sometimes people put lime t-shirt with the logo of Umkhonto we but the colors of the organization is green, black, and gold. The dominant green color represents the land which must be reclaimed from colonial settlers and equitably redistributed to all the people and preserved as a legacy for future generations. So that is what the green represents, the land and our natural resources. The black color represents commitment to liberation of black and indigenous people from colonial oppression and dispossession. The color black also represents the purposeful intention to unite all black people in the struggle for total emancipation. The color gold represents MKP's commitments to reclaim and locally beneficiate all our natural resources and other economic assets. The logo of MKP shall be a gold circle colored in green and a warrior inside the circle holding a gold spear in the middle with the inscription MK. The spear in the middle represents the continued struggle for total freedom and emancipation. And it also says that no regalia of Umkhonto we and paraphernalia shall be printed and reproduced in any other color other than the colors of the MK. So of course there are t-shirts like the t-shirts, the black t-shirt, that comrade is what doesn't have the gold circle. It's not the logo of Umkhonto we even the one which even the one which Gavin is wearing is there is no gold circle. But we understand that some of the logos were printed prior to the description of, and I know the Dan TG Menzi had circulated to all the merchandisers. Even that one is a mistaken one. Now, comrades, you know what this means about so white is not a color. You can use white to put logos of the organization, but even if purple or red or pink is your favorite color, you can't go and put logo of Umkhonto on a t-shirt that is pink or a blue t-shirt. It will be violation of the constitution of Umkhonto to do so. Even if you want to be colorful, you must stay away. The constitution says we must use our colors in terms of how we get to popularize our movement. The aims and objectives of Umkhonto we one is that is what we intend to achieve as Umkhonto we One is to unite all the anti-colonial, anti-imperialist and anti-racist progressive forces in South Africa to fight for total political, economic, social, spatial, cultural, and knowledge, ideological freedom and emancipation. So the first aim of Umkhonto we is unification. And after unification, number 2 is to tirelessly fight for the return of all South African natural and economic resources to the ownership, control, and benefit of the people as a whole. And how do we do that? So we unite, we fight. And how do we fight? We fight through conscientization and mobilization. So then aim number 3 is to mobilize, educate, agitate, conscientize the people of South Africa behind the vision and mission of total political emancipation, radical economic transformation, and economic emancipation. So that is what we aim to achieve, to reclaim all the land and natural resources that were forcefully and violently taken from indigenous people and redistributed to all the people equitably through the instrumentality of a democratic state, that we want our land back. That is a clear emphasis. Now, comrades, there's an issue which as leadership we need to proper understand and internalize. So you see, as leadership of detachments in provinces and at regional level, you must appreciate the distinction between mobilization and organizing. So as a collective, you must organize structures into sub-regional structures. That is when you organize people into proper structures, proper campaigns, and organize people into VD-based branches and ward-based branches when the guideline comes out in terms of how our wards are going to be constituted. So that is organizing when you know each and every person that is assigned a task by the organization of Mkhonto weSizwe. You know that in Johannesburg, Ward 44, who are our ground forces in that ward? In each and every VD. That is organizing properly. Mobilization is that thing of calling people to a meeting. Loud hailing, comrades, there's a rally, let's gather. And the biggest instrument towards our victory will be organization than mobilization. Mobilization, we can demonstrate strength later on, but the biggest aspect that we need to emphasize on is organization. Archbishop Zondo will tell you that, so you know, if you in a church environment, you call a crusade, you can call in 3,000 people. And you can call an altar call and it can come and then they repent, all of them. 2 weeks later, they are no longer associated with that. They are no longer interested. Because there is no organization of the church there. But when you do the church, you go and talk one by one. This is, you must come on Sundays, on Wednesdays, there's a prayer, there's an intercession on Monday. And this is how you persuade other people. Mobilization, you can organize a very big rally. You must go and check the rallies of all political parties in Beckersdale. What number was that? What 35? You must go and check the numbers, the sizes of the rallies of all the political parties that were there in Beckersdale and read the election results. You will realize that mobilization, you can be very excited, you think that you are in control. But of course, there must be a dynamic combination of mobilization and organization. But as the structures of Mkhonto weSizwe, we must emphasize on organizing. It is part of our responsibilities. Comrade Mutsi. So we should know who are the leaders of Mkhonto weSizwe in all the sub-regions of Dr. Ruth Schomuzu Mumpat. In Greater Taung is the most far place in South Africa. And in Mamusa, and all of those areas. Part of our objectives, comrades, is to introduce parliamentary sovereignty and power in a manner that will represent the interests and aspirations of the people. So, to say parliamentary sovereignty is to say we need total political power. That once parliament has taken a decision, when majority in parliament has taken a decision, there must not be a scope for a court to change the decisions of parliament. Once the majority have spoken, that decision must be final. So we're calling for the dictatorship of the majority. If we were a Leninist party, we'll say this is dictatorship of the proletariat. So we are calling for the dictatorship of the majority. And dictatorship of the majority is through democracy. Majority rule. That we're calling for parliamentary sovereignty as part of what we are fighting for. Number 6, Mkhonto weSizwe exists to democratically and decisively take over political power in South Africa, which will be used as an instrument for total freedom and emancipation. So to democratically take political power, it means we take political power on behalf of the majority. You can take political power without the majority. You can overthrow a government without the support of the majority. But Mkhonto weSizwe aims to democratically take power on behalf of the majority. We have not yet decided to take power through any other means. We are now saying democratic. There is no decision about taking power, comrade pump gun. There's no decision about taking power through any other means. It's through democratic means, which means we must persuade as many people. The other objective of Umkhonto we is to take over economic power and pursue economic expansion through purposeful-led, state-led industrialization. But also the aim of Umkhonto we is to grow the productive forces, that is to grow the economy in a manner that will guarantee full employment and create conditions for common and full prosperity for all the people. That we're going to create full employment for all the people who need quality and sustainable jobs. That when we exist as Umkhonto it's not a manifesto commitment, it's a constitutional obligation of Umkhonto that we aim to create jobs for everyone. Not for those who are below the age of 35 and all these regulations. So as an activist of Umkhonto when people come to you and say, the municipality is excluding us because they say we're above 35, you must know that that is your battle. Because we are fighting for employment of everyone who can work and is in need of a job. Number 10 is to fight for the interest, rights, and aspirations of all workers, including the rights to unionize, to work in safe and protected workplaces, and the right to earn a living wage. What that number 10 does is to squarely place Umkhonto as a working class organization. So in the battle between the capitalist and the working class, Umkhonto is on the side of the working class. So if you find workers marching, Ranshilo Rabelel, Tebogo, and Mafikeng, you don't ask, you join in the march, you will ask later, what are we fighting for? Because we're on the side of workers. When you find workers in action, we naturally are associated with workers. That is our struggles. The workers are always right. If you find there's no activity to do, you realize that there's marching today, you just join into the to then, comrades, what are we fighting for today? But let's go on. You even, what are we doing tomorrow? That is where we are as a movement, that we are fighting on the side of the working class. We are not a bourgeois political party. They are, by the way, political parties that fight for the interest of the capitalists. They call them investors, they call them all sorts of names. And then they say, no, we want to make a manifesto, but what are the investors going to say? No, let's just check with the investors or their representatives of what are they going to say. Ourselves in Umkhonto, the question we ask is, how are our people going to benefit from whatever action we take as a movement? How does this benefit the working class and the poor? That is the question that every time you ask that, even when we're in government, when we're in parliament, when we're in every institution, whenever a legislation is introduced, we must ask a question, how are our people going to benefit out of this thing? And we have to say this because you will see, comrades, when we rise to full power, there will be those even from amongst us who will say, yeah, we want to repair the bridges, we want to build schools, but how do we eat out of that thing? And that seems to be the main driving motive of the sitting government. There's crisis of electricity. The question they are looking for, or the responsibilities they are looking at, is not how to resolve electricity. They say, how do we eat out of this electricity crisis? Everything for them is about eating. In some instances, they can delay a project because they've not yet been offered a bribe. No one has come to say, no, this is how we're going to eat here. Then they say, no, if we are not assured that will not happen, that will not happen. But Umkhonto sees that the question we ask is, how do we benefit our people? How do the constituencies that we represent get to benefit out of the work that we do? That is why part of our objectives in number 11 is to fight and reduce inequalities and poverty in South Africa, to fight all manifestations of crime and criminality in all spheres of society. But also we aim to assemble the best qualified and most skilled relevant people to provide a responsive and responsible government which will benefit all the people of South Africa and maintain mutually beneficial economic, political, and social relationships with people of the African continent and the world. The other objective, comrades, is to fight for and introduce free, quality, and decolonized education for all, from elementary schools until postgraduate level. So we're going to fight, it's in the constitution to fight for free education from creche, from early childhood development to postgraduate level. We're the only organization that makes that bold commitment, that from creche to postgraduate level. Not just first degree, that if you want to get a PhD, Mkhonto Wesizwe says that the state must make resources available for postgraduate studies as well, without payment of any cent. And in that regard, we've got a firm foundation because our President and Commander General, as head of state and president, he had already introduced free education, which was disrupted by those who came after him. The other obligation and objective of Mkhonto Wesizwe is to elevate and officially recognize the roles of royal, indigenous, and traditional leaders in South Africa's democratic system through giving clearly defined legislative and oversight powers to the National House of Traditional Leaders. Comrades, whether we want it or not, whether you prefer it or not, traditional leaders are part of our system of governance in society. They are just not recognized by those who are in government. Mkhonto Wesizwe says that let's clearly define as to what becomes the role of traditional leaders. Not just to invite them into gatherings and not give them any role to play. Because when you don't have any role for traditional leaders, you have effectively abolished the institution and system of traditional leadership. Many other parts of the world, even established so-called democracies, have got a dynamic way of integrating traditional and royal leadership into their systems of governance. We as Mkhonto Wesizwe should and aim to institutionalize and recognize the system of traditional leadership in South Africa in a manner that is democratic, balanced and fair, and has got respect for gender equality in terms of how such is going to be handled. It's not backward to embrace systems that define how we should move forward. The other objective is to fight for the interests and aspirations of professionals, particularly those that are excluded from mainstream participation through apartheid and colonialism. So Mkhonto Wesizwe itself has got an intention to fight for all professionals. I know their comrades were proposed that they want to form a different organization called MK Professionals as a separate organization. We will still get to entertain that in terms of how it should happen. To fight, champion, and advocate for the interest and aspirations of all military veterans and ex-combatants. It's a main objective of Mkhonto Wesizwe. It's to fight for and promote gender equality in the MK structures and all spheres of society. To fight against all forms of gender-based violence, crime against children and people with disabilities. And that is one of our objectives, that we emphasize that we'll fight against gender-based violence, against the crime on children and people with disabilities. That will fight for the cultural and knowledge relevance and hegemony of all South African cultural and knowledge systems and solutions. And we're going to fight for the mainstreaming of sound traditional and indigenous healing systems and medicines in a manner that will collaborate with and enhance scientifically proven solutions. But part of our work as well is to raise the levels of political consciousness amongst the people. That is important. That, do you know, as leadership, we must always raise the levels of political consciousness amongst our people. There is a very interesting quote which is given by an author, a revolutionary actually, called Assata Shakur. You must do background check about that. She says that people do get used to anything. And the less you think about your oppression, the more your tolerance for it grows. After a while, people just think oppression is a normal state of things. But to become free, you have to become acutely aware that you are a slave. That is what Asanta Shakur says, that in ourselves, when you raise people's levels of political consciousness, is to illustrate to them every day that it's not natural that white people are automatically our bosses. It's not natural that we are landless. It's not a decision of God that we are poor. The poverty that characterizes it's a material condition which through common action we can change. And that is the political consciousness that you must give to our people as leadership every day. If you do not raise people's levels of political consciousness, then you become danger to yourself and to the organization. In terms of, and also exist to fight racism. Objective number 26 is to resist any form of collaboration with the racist minority agenda and program. So, if someone asks, will you ever be in government with the DA? The answer is no, because we aim to not collaborate with racism. It's in the constitution of Umkhonto weSizwe. We also fight to decolonize South Africa's knowledge systems and laws in a manner that will embrace and uphold decolonized laws and systems against colonial and neo-colonial laws such as the Roman Dutch law and English law and doctrine. Like that is basically that we are moving away from the Roman Dutch law. But also fight for a sound relationship between South Africa and the entire African continent in a manner and direction that seeks to achieve gradual integration towards common prosperity, freedom, and development. And that we're going to associate with the Global South, and that we're going to contribute as Umkhonto weSizwe towards a progressive shift in the global balance of forces by strengthening institutions of the Global South like BRICS Plus and its alliances. You know, comrades, you must, but I think we will one day talk about the profound legacy of President Zuma in terms of the building the Global South agenda and placing South Africa at the center of progressive internationalism in a true sense. So, you know, you must go and listen to the part in the press conference where he was announcing the conveners of Mpumalanga and KwaZulu-Natal. I was not in that press conference. But the part where he was speaking about the de-dollarization of the global economy and how as head of state and president, he introduced that concept and practice in the BRICS bloc. And the deliberations that got to happen in that front. And it's one of the issues that we will talk about. What Umkhonto weSizwe aims to get to achieve. Section 4 on page 13. Speak to the principles and values of the organization. What are the principles and values of the organization? 10 principles. One is Ubuntu, Ubuntu. That umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu. So munu imunu iban bangwan. Mintul. And principle number 2 is unity in action. The emphasis, let me just emphasize on Ubuntu that Mkhonto weSizwe is founded on that principle that we exist because of other people. We are not existing for selfish purposes and for self-interest. Number two, the principle and value is unity in action, that everything else that we do is to unify all the progressive forces. And then that informs why we have to pursue Pan-Africanism, patriotism, and equality. And that, they speak to each other, all these principles and values, and then followed by honesty and respect. Honesty means that you cannot tell lies, you can't claim easy victories. You can't say you're going to do something and you don't do it. You can't, as a provincial leader, you say, I'm coming to the sub-region there, and then you go and stop somewhere in a tavern and not arrive in a sub-regional meeting or branch meeting. Whatever commitment that you make to structures, to members of the community, you must fulfill. Honesty and respect. Respect means that we must respect everyone. You can't use insulting language even against members of opposition parties. It's not allowed in the organization. That is a principle that is recognized. The other principle in the Constitution of Mkhonto weSizwe is democratic centralism. Democratic centralism means that decisions of upper structures are binding on lower structures. So once the National High Command has taken decisions, or the national officials which have got decision-making powers, full decision-making powers in between meetings of the National High Command, once a decision is taken, you can't say that as MK Free State we have got a different view to the National High Command, or as MK Northwest we disagree. By the time you finish that we disagree with the National High Command, you will be on the other side of the Constitution. And that applies to regions. Once the province gives a directive, you can't be fighting back that, no, we don't agree as a Kuruleni, where our view is different. We have got one organization. Democratic centralism means that we are going to consult each other on some decisions that are practical to consult on. But once decisions are taken, your right to disagree doesn't matter anymore. We defend the decision. So, comrades, what that means is that as a member of the provincial detachment or regional detachment, if you take a collective decision that it looks like this sub-regional structure is not doing very well, we must dissolve it. Even if you have got a different view, when you are sent to go and communicate the dissolution of the sub-regional structure, you must not go there and say, no, those people say I must come and disband you. You must go there and say, we are here to dissolve you because you have not been doing work of the organization. Even if you had a different view, you must own up to the decisions and practice them. You must learn, it must be natural in your system that once decisions are taken, they are binding to you. You must learn how to articulate them even better than how those who proposed it were explaining it. That is democratic centralism. Once we take decisions, you must be able to defend those decisions. Any given point. That is basically what it means. We will not have an organization without democratic centralism. Democratic centralism is the glue that holds the movement together, solid. It makes peace in the organization, that the organization will know that once we say that by this particular period, the following should have been met as mandate. We know it's going to happen like that. Not debated over for a very long time. Yeah, we need an explanation. What does the National Law Command mean about this? We need to be told what is this? Yeah, what criteria was used to come to this decision? So that is, and that is how it should be, comrades. All of us must live with that reality. But the other principle is mandates, accountability, and reporting, that from time to time we must take mandates and be accountable for that and report. So all of us who go to meetings of Umkhonto Wesizwe, so as a member of the provincial detachment, regional detachment, if you go to a meeting and then you leave that meeting without knowing what you're going to do, you're in a wrong meeting. So at the end of the meeting, you must ask the chair, the convener, we are finishing this meeting. Between now and the next meeting, what do you expect us to do? Like, to just go home. If you leave a meeting of Umkhonto Wesizwe and you don't know what to do between that meeting and the next meeting, it's a wrong meeting. And legitimately you must ask, okay, we are closing the meeting, but what do you expect us to do what do we report on when we come in the next meeting? When we leave here, it must be clear at any given point in the manner in which the organization operates. The other principle is organic forms of public representation. So what that means is that we must know what is happening in the environment and the communities that we serve. We must be one with the people. You can't be a leader of Umkhonto Wesizwe who, when you articulate, he says that, no, I read on Facebook that there is water problems in this area. No. You must know yourself firsthand of what are the issues. You must not be like Ndaweni Mahlangu, the former premier of Mpumalanga. So the same Ndaweni Mahlangu will be reading a speech. He says that in this place here, we have built 5,000 houses, and people are asking, oh, P. He says, man. Because he is just reading from what he has there. You can't rely on what you just read on social media. And then you quote newspapers that, no, I read in the newspapers that there's a big problem there. And then you think that is being political. That, no, there's an issue that I read on Facebook. There was a problem in Orange Farm. And we have not been there. As a leader, whenever there are issues that you have to attend to, you must be there. You must know what are the issues that affect our people, not through mediated means in terms of what happens. But the other principle is discipline and hard work. That you must always go in a disciplined way beyond the work that you are mandated. The other principle is knowledgeability and meritocracy. The other one is class consciousness. We'll explain in detail of what that means, that you must be aware that we are fighting on the side of the working class, but also you must be knowledgeable. You must seek to improve your knowledge every day. Every day you must get to learn something new. As a leader of Umkhonto Wesizwe, as a leader of Umkhonto Wesizwe Women and Youth Leagues and Student Movement. In section 5, which is page 19, membership of Umkhonto Wesizwe is open to all South Africans who are registered to vote and are above the age of 16 years. So everyone above the age of 16 years in South Africa is allowed to register to vote. We hear that, Youth League. So that becomes your program of action as an immediate program. That everyone above the age of 16 is allowed to register to vote. So because the MK Youth League, so voting is up is from the age of 18. To vote is the age of 18, but to register to vote is 16 years and above in terms of the Electoral Act of South Africa. What that means, Youth League, is that because the Youth League does not exist in institutions of higher learning, your primary target must be high schools. For everyone above the age of 16, you start to register them to vote. You must even think about having high school-based branches and do work of the organization there. And then you conscientize everyone. So the membership, and make them to join Umkhonto weSizwe from the age of 16. That is the membership of Umkhonto weSizwe, is from age of 16. And membership application is obtained individually through filling of a membership form or online application, and thereafter allocation to and confirmation by the branch of the MK. So when it says that membership is obtained individually, it means we join one by one. So you don't say that, no, I'm going to sign for my family as well. We're 3 at home. You join by yourself. If your family wants to join, they must join one by one. Even if you have got an organization that you are leading, civil society organization or union, you can't say, no, as the general secretary of this union, I'm going to sign for my members as well. I'm bringing masses. No. You join alone. We treat membership one by one in terms of how the membership of Umkhonto weSizwe is. And then it's opened to all the people of South Africa who are opposed to colonialism and white minority rule. That is membership of Umkhonto weSizwe. That members of Umkhonto weSizwe must wholeheartedly serve the people and must be ready to make personal sacrifice and dedicate their lives to realizing the aims and objectives of our organization. That Umkhonto weSizwe shall forever owe their allegiance to the members of the working class. No member of MKP shall pursue any self-enrichment, personal gain, or privilege at the expense of the people and the organization. That all members of Umkhonto weSizwe will be placed on probation for a period of 24 months after joining, meaning that the membership may be summarily cancelled collectively by the national officials at any point during the probation period. So probation period means that the leadership of Umkhonto weSizwe, if you have violated gross violation, there can be a decision permissibly which is allowed by the Constitution to cancel your membership without having taken you to a disciplinary hearing, which is costly and might take for a very long time. If you disrupt meetings of Umkhonto weSizwe, take out firearms and threaten people, and you can see that this is done beyond any doubt, why should we take such a person to a disciplinary committee, which is expensive? We take a decision to cancel their membership in terms of the Constitution. Maybe after the 24 months, we can then say maybe there was a mistake. But now there is no space for mistakes now. Now there is no space for mistake in terms, and it says the cancellation of the membership will be done against members whom the national officials believe have violated the organizational principles, policies, and prescripts, or are not aligned to the strategic objectives of the organization. So there are obvious cases where you know that this one does not need the disciplinary process. And that every time when such action is taken, the president must be in concurrence. That the National High Command and national officials of the MK have the power to accept, reject, or cancel membership of those who applied for membership or are members not living up to the disciplinary standards of the organization. And the power to cancel the membership is exclusively assigned to the National High Command and national officials, but not provincial, regional, sub-regional, ward and voting district structures. I will clear comrades about that. So as the provincial detachment, you can't sit and cancel the membership of anyone. You can, when a person has violated the constitution, you can report them, but you can't take a decision to cancel the membership of anyone as the province, as a region. And membership is open to those who accept that the membership can be cancelled for political, ideological, and organizational reasons. That members of Umkhonto weSizwe are not allowed to join and participate in political activities whose aims and objectives contradict the aims of Umkhonto weSizwe, and save for highly exceptional and strategic circumstances, and with the approval of national officials and the National High Command, members of the MK are not allowed to be members of another political party except organizations in formal alliance with the MK. Now, comrades, what that means is that if you are a member of a different political party and you are a member of the MK, you need a written approval from the national officials. You must write to the national officials to explain that I want to retain dual membership because I was deployed to this council by the organization which has now decided to collapse into MK. And if I resign my membership of the organization, I will lose being a councillor. But from now until 2026, I have to maintain this dual membership when the organization will fold fully into MK. Are we together, comrades? So those are the few circumstances and areas where we can permit dual membership. It says for exceptional circumstances, but dual membership is not allowed in Umkhonto weSizwe. You can't be a member of Umkhonto weSizwe and be a member of a different political party, except with the approval of the leadership. And membership of Umkhonto weSizwe is opened to everyone, and it's 20 rand for a period of 24 months and must be paid and deposited individually or collectively in the official bank accounts of the organization. And members must pay membership fees by themselves and not paid for by any other person. I want us, comrades, to read together the following section. On the declaration which all of us have to sign when we join Umkhonto weSizwe. Let us then check on page 21. Can we please check, all of us, page 21 of the Constitution? Are we ready, all of us? Yeah, we must stand up when we're taking a declaration now. All of us have to take the declaration. So we're going to read the declaration on the membership of Umkhonto weSizwe. Are we, all of us, ready, comrades? So on page 16, let us start. We then mention our names, and then we then move into how we deal with that. Let's start. I, Floyd Shubham, voluntarily join Umkhonto weSizwe as an individual who is committed to abide by and uphold its constitution, values, objectives, principles, and discipline. I commit that I will never be involved in divisive and factional activities and programs that seek to undermine the unity and discipline of the organization. I vow to not associate with external forces that seek to destroy and undermine the unity of the organization. I will tirelessly work to realize all its aims and objectives. I join the MKP with full knowledge and understanding that the National High Command and national officials have the right to terminate my membership at any given point for political, ideological, and organizational reasons and purposes. I join the MK with full knowledge that I'm not entitled to any position of responsibility in the organization and will always abide by and respect the decision of the leadership. I commit to serve the people of South Africa, the African continent, and the world with humility and dedication. I am not joining the MK for personal gains and self-enrichment, but to advance the cause for total freedom and emancipation. I consider myself specifically bound by the disciplinary code of the MK. I consider not to take the organization. I promise not to take the organization to court unless all internal remedies have been exhausted. Thank you very much, Comrade Samantha. So that is the declaration that all of us must commit to as membership of Umkhonto weSizwe. And number 17, the Constitution says that the national officials of Umkhonto weSizwe will be allowed within applicable legislation to utilize part of or all the data provided by members for responsible and sound programs aimed at building their capacity and building the organization. What that means is that when you give us your cell phone number and email address in the membership form, the national officials can responsibly utilize that data to send you other useful information, educational information on issues that, or employment opportunities, whatever information that is useful in building your capacity and building the capacity of the organization. That clause have to be in the Constitution so that when the organization sends you information, it does not violate the other regulatory legislation that exists in society. That is basically what the membership section deals with. And section 5B is duties and obligations of members that were obliged to be loyal to the organization and who must always submit to the duly authorized directives and mandates of the organization. That we must always adhere to the principle that the interest of the party, of the organization, before or coordinating our personal interest to the interest of the MK, and being the first to bear hardships and the last to enjoy comforts, working tirelessly and selflessly for the public interest and making a significant contribution. All members of the MK are encouraged to engage in genuine criticism and self-criticism, must have the courage to reveal and correct statements and actions violating the MK's principles and shortcomings and mistakes in work, and resolutely combat corruption and other forms of misconduct. The principle of self-criticism is important for any organization to self-sustain. And we do that in a democratic way in the organization. And as comrades, as leaders, if you realize that there's a weakness in the comrade, you go and talk to them like one-to-one and say, no, but you know, the manner in which you're handling this issue is not constructive. You don't wait to want to humiliate them now in the collective structure. That way, I saw this comrade yesterday, was speaking to people there, he didn't even greet them, he didn't do this. I said, when you talk to branches, you must respect them. Instead of waiting for an opportunity to humiliate people, that's not leadership. It's building each other's character at any given point. That if the secretary, the coordinator, does not write proper minutes, you must tell them that this is not how minutes are written in the meeting. Minutes are written like this will actually help each other so that in the next meeting we've got proper minutes. Not you leave the meeting to finish and then later on that secretary can't even write minutes. Now you're gossiping. What kind of coordinator is that who can't even write minutes? Did you see those things? Do you call those things minutes? But you never say that in the meeting. You don't say it in the meeting. So as leadership, whenever there is an issue which you identify this is a weakness, you must raise it there. That no, leadership, this is not done like this. And if leadership comes to a meeting without minutes, you must raise it there. That why do you come to a meeting without minutes? How do you go ahead? You come to a meeting without minutes. How do we know which decisions we took the last time? In terms of that is the self-criticism that we're obliged to respect the code of conduct and understand what the code of conduct says. But also, these members of Mkondo Wesizwe must resist tribalism, sexism, and racism, and must treat everyone with utmost respect and dignity. That we must respect all traditional leaders, we must respect and honor all religious leaders. We must respect and listen to all people irrespective of their political affiliations. You can't be a leader of Mkondo Wesizwe and say, I don't want to listen to those people. Those people are ANC. How are you going to convince them? You know, the president speaks in the, you can say this, national organizer. In the national officials, he says that, you know, comrades, the patience that you must have, that you must even have the patience to convince even MPP. You can see that this one is sent for destabilization. You must just get to persuade them. And then you turn them to be the people on the other side now of those who sent them. And that is the kind of leadership that we want. Respect and listen to everyone. Because if we are going to be some sect, like we're not going to grow this organization, where it will just be us only. Don't want anyone else that. Did you see? He was working with some ANC people there. I saw him yesterday, he was with EFF. This one is selling out. How are you going to win the 2/3 majority? How are you going to persuade people to come to Mkondo Wesizwe? How are you going to persuade them? Because remember that these people who are supposed to give us 2/3 are voting for other political parties. Some are even members of other political parties now. Some are leaders of other political parties. How are you going to bring them? If every time you go and engage them, you are going to be like, no, there's a problem. This comrade is selling us out. He's selling us out. I saw that comrade like the neighbor is ANC, is a councillor of the ANC. There's no way. You even get accused of a neighbor. How is the organization going to grow? If every time you want to create some wall and don't want to engage other members of the organization. Mkondo Wesizwe have got rights. It's in section 6, the rights we can read for ourselves in terms of the right to attend all the relevant meetings of Mkondo Wesizwe and receive the documents, the right to participate, the right to make suggestions, the right to offer well-founded criticism at MK meetings. That is a right of MK members. Not on street corners, not on social media. We do that not on WhatsApp groups. We do in meetings of Mkondo Wesizwe where we give proper criticism of our own decisions and what we are doing as a movement. Section 7, I did explain earlier that the Section 7 speaks to organizational leadership structures. The head of the organization in terms of the leadership structures is the president, who is our commander general. And in sequence, underneath the president, there is a royal house. There is still going to be a process to constitute the royal house. The royal house will be constituted of kings and queens. In South Africa, we do not have more than 10 queens and kings that we know of now. So the president will have an advisory council that is composed of the royal kings and queens, who will be an advisory council to the president in terms of the issues of strategy and importance. So the royal house interacts with the organization through the president. So I don't have the full list of the kings, but I know that we've got Isilo Samabandla, we've got Ukumkane King Nkosi or Kumkani Dalindev. And then we've got Nkosi or Ukumkani Skau. And then we've got Queen Mujaji, who is recognized as well. We've got the kingdom of Ramapuran of the Venda nation. We've got, I spoke about Isilo Samabandla is Nkosi, it's not Nkosi, it's Isilo Samabandla. Yeah, it ends there. And then we've got Abatembu is Dalinjeb. And then we've got the king of Amakhoza as well. Amatlubi is not a recognized king, but is then dealt with in terms of the legislation. But all the royal houses get to, and we know that there's battles for recognition of Amatlubi and other traditional royal councils. So the royal house is the one which will advise the president in terms of issues of strategic importance. And then underneath the royal house, there's a council of traditional religious leaders. This one is a full structure which will be a recognized structure in Mkhonto weSizwe, comprised of traditional and religious leaders representing all cultures, languages, and religions in South Africa. So all traditional and religious leaders of South Africa will have direct designation or designated representation in the Council of Traditional and Religious Leaders. It will have two conveners, one representing the traditional leadership or royal leadership, and one representing the religious leadership. The Council for Traditional and Religious Leaders will provide moral, political, spiritual counsel and guidance to the membership and supporters of Mkhonto weSizwe and leadership. And will meet twice per year. That in the meetings of the Council of Traditional and Religious Leaders, the National High Command will present through the President and the Secretary General a comprehensive report of the organization and state of affairs in South Africa, Africa, and the world. Now you see in the ANC and other organizations, they've got a conference. In Mkhonto weSizwe, we don't have a conference where we report to. We're going to report to the Council of Traditional and Religious Leaders. So in the ANC, they recruit members and then elect delegates, and then they say they represent South Africa. So it's 4,000 wards in South Africa, and then 100 members per branch, and then only 50 make a quorum. So you can see that it's already, the membership is 200,000 or 300,000 people, and then they call a national conference. We represent 300,000 people. So Mkhonto weSizwe says, when we want to report, let's constitute a council of traditional and religious leaders. Traditional leaders will lead constituencies, and religious leaders will lead their own constituencies. Not people who still have got their calling in their own hearts and minds that I'm a religious leader, but they're not leading any church. People who are leading constituencies. And if we properly constitute the council of religious and traditional leaders, it can be the most representative body in the politics of South Africa, of people who represent real constituencies. So if in the council of religious and traditional leaders, we've got representatives of the Baptist Church, the Nazareth Baptist Church of Unyaz Lezu, and if we've got the representatives of the Zion Christian churches, both sides, if we've got representatives of the 12 Apostle churches, the 12 Apostle Church in Christ and the 12 Apostle Church in Trinity, if we've got the representatives of the IPHC, or IPCC, if we have got the representatives, I can tell you conclusively now that that council of traditional and religious leaders will be representing majority of South Africans. If we have got the representatives of Isilo of all the kingdoms, will be reporting to majority of South Africans. So the manner in which Umkhonto we reports and connects with society is far much superior than any other political party. It's not for internal processes in terms of how it is handled. The next structure, comrades, after the council is the national officials. The national officials is the president, deputy president, SG, DSG, national organizer, national chairperson, deputy national chairperson, treasurer general. So you saw in the president rules, it mentions something called the president will assign a head of presidency who will be chief of staff with full participation rights in all meetings and structures of the organization. So the national high command and national officials have got in the constitution the participation rights of the chief of staff, but can take a decision to extend participation rights to other strategic offices in the organization. Are we together, comrades? So that there is smooth, seamless integration in terms of how decisions are taken and processed moving forward. And number B on national officials says the national officials are a constitutional structure of the organization and have decision-making powers in between meetings of the national high command and will guide the entire organization on political, ideological, and organizational decisions. The national officials meet every 2 weeks. It says now on number D, the national officials will meet every 2 weeks or as and when it is necessary to hold meetings. And the national officials will present a comprehensive report to the National High Command. So when we read the section on the National High Command, it will illustrate that the National High Command meets once per quarter, which is the highest decision-making body. But in between that, the national officials can take decisions, but must keep record of all the decisions that it takes and present a comprehensive report to the National High Command. Are we together, comrades? So we can't say that no, now, because we have to take a decision on establishment of structures, which is a mandate from the beginning. We must always, every weekend, call National High Command meetings. Doesn't work like that. There is no organization that works like that. There has to be a working committee that gets to process day-to-day decisions. And in the case of Umkhonto we is the national officials that take such decisions. And then there's designated responsibilities of the national officials. A key highlight on the responsibilities of the president and the powers of the president. It says on page 26, on the first sentence on top there, that the president has got the ultimate power to issue presidential decrees on any matter pertaining to the operation, administration, and policy direction of the organization in the interest of the organization, which shall be binding on all levels of the organization. And that the president may determine and convene policy and consultative conferences to discuss issues and matters deemed important for the growth of the organizations. Only the president can convene a consultative conference. So even if you feel very strong or you are agitated about something, you can't say that, no, I'm going to write a letter, I want to convene a conference, we're tired. You know, there's no such, it's not allowed. In the Constitution, it's not there in the Constitution. It's only the president that can call such a meeting. In terms of, it outlines the roles of the deputy president, that he or she can be a member, if he or she is a member of parliament, who will be head of the parliamentary legal caucus, legal affairs, and be responsible for disciplinary matters. Secretary General's rules. The Secretary General of Umkhonto weSizwe is the Chief Executive Officer of the organization. Is the custodian of the following functions: membership and related systems, deployment, monitoring and evaluation of governance, particularly MK caucuses and public representatives, working with the national organizer, communications, Luther, and security. The Secretary General, in concurrence with the national organizer, is responsible for the establishment of MK structures and the detachments. DSG assists the Secretary General and responsible for human capital of the organization and contractual obligation. National organizer is responsible for organizing development of MK organizational documents and guidelines, political education, policy and research, monitoring and evaluation of governance, particularly MK caucuses and representatives, working with the Secretary General. Cadre development is also responsible for representing the MK in IEC structures, and in concurrence with the SG is responsible for the establishment of MK structures and detachments. The national chairperson presides over all meetings of the National High Command and national gatherings of the MK. Is responsible for stakeholder relations, particularly traditional leaders and religious sector. Deputy National Chairperson deputizes the National Chair and will be responsible for looking after the welfare of military veterans and ex-combatants in the struggle against the apartheid. And that the Deputy National Chair works with the Secretary General to deal with security of the organization. The TG is responsible for fundraising, budgeting, audit and accounting, compliance, merchandising and all assets of the organization. I want to read these following sections and we must pay attention, comrades. It says, the national officials are permitted to enter into binding agreements on behalf of the organization. The only national officials permitted to enter into binding contractual obligations such as lease agreements, employment contracts, and business commitments on behalf of the organization are the President, Secretary General, and General. Any letter or contract that is not signed by any of the officials mentioned in G, which is the President, SG, or TG, is not binding on the organization. That the officials mentioned in the section above may delegate the signing powers to other members of the national officials, employees, and deployees of the organization. That the national officials shall be empowered to create any additional positions which form part of the national officials as the need may arise or as determined by the President. The emphasis about these binding contractual agreements is that you can't, as the province, go and sign a lease agreement or employ people and sign to commit the organization's resources. You can have all the negotiations, but when it comes to signing, you must send to head office for signing. Are we together, comrades? We can give you a practical example of why we have to do that. We are protecting the organization. Did you talk about this thing of course of public? So I want to give an example of what happened because I think we have spoken about this publicly. That so you see in December 2024, after the first anniversary festivities, it comes to all of us, the officials of Umkhonto weSizwe, that there are 65 employees that were employed by MK in KwaZulu-Natal without our knowledge. And there were 28 lease agreements of offices that were established without our knowledge. And which has got huge financial implications. And that time we are on a holiday mood, they are saying, no, but our salaries, which salaries? And then we start calling each other, do you know anything about salaries? DSG, you are responsible for the stuff. I don't know anything about that. In the beginning, we thought maybe it's 2 or 3 people. I wanted to discover it's 65 comrades who were employed. So we're protecting the organization like this. That if you've got reasonable, sound proposals on employment of staff and lease agreements, bring it to the office and say, we want to establish an office in this area. In Gauteng, we hear that the regional office of Johannesburg must be in the city center, but how about an office in Soweto and Alexander and Diepsloot in Orange Farm? So that we can listen to. And Tshwane can come and say, yes, the office must be in the city center. What about an office in Soshanguve and Mamelodi and Hammanskraal in Atteridgeville? So that is closer to the people who can listen to that, and head office can enter into a contract directly so that we are able to. So that section of the Constitution protects the organization so that we do not get to, and it's way too difficult. Like, we have to protect it like that. You know, so, hey, I'm now almost giving an organizational report. So that is what it is. We've outlined the roles of the national officials. The National High Command is the highest decision-making body of the MKP, appointed by the president, and is responsible for all work and obligations of the organization, including oversight of those who are deployed to representative bodies. National High Command takes decisions, and if the National High Command is not sitting, the national officials exercises all powers of the National High Command in terms of the work that is required, because that is how organizational design has got to put it like that. The National High Command may delegate any of its powers to the national officials or the Secretariat. So all the composition of the national officials is dealt with there, but the emphasis, comrades, is that the presidents and secretaries general, which will be convener and coordinator of the MK Youth League, Women's League, Students Movement, are members of the National High Command. And that members serving in the National High Command will not be deployed to representative bodies such as councils, provincial legislatures, and parliament, unless in exceptional circumstances decided by the president and officials. And even in those exceptional circumstances, the number of National High Command members who can serve in representative bodies can exceed 10%. So the National High Command now has got 39 plus 8 people. So it's 48, 47. No, there's one resignation, so it's 48. And the sensible resignation because of work commitments. Then the 10% of that will be 4 point something, so it's 5. So they can't be 5 people who are deployed, who are serving in the national leadership. And that has been exercised in a very rare environment. Then the Secretariat is established in page 33. Secretariat is a coordinating and implementing structure of the MK, responsible for the day-to-day running of the organization. So Secretariat, comrades, is not a decision-making structure. The national officials, the National High Command, or the provincial detachment or regional detachment, you can take a decision that we're going to have a rally. We're going to have a rally on this date. But national officials doesn't have to deal with the actual logistics of that. Secretariat means that you know that it's a decision to have a rally in Moses Mabhida. Then you sit as Secretariat. Who books the venue? How many buses do we need? Where do we get the stage? That is what the Secretariat does. The actual implementation of the day-to-day work of the organization. So it can make recommendations for ease of functioning, but it's not a decision-making structure. And it is chaired by the Secretary General, and the Secretary of the Secretariat is the national organizer. The DSG is a deputy to the Secretary General in terms of chairing of the Secretariat, so that it operates optimally. And it is also comprised of the staff members of the organization and the assistance of the national officials. And also there is something called the Extended Secretariat, which is established on I, after HI, it says the Extended Secretariat. So it says prior to meetings on H, prior to meetings of the National High Command and Extended Secretariat, meeting will be convened to process reports that will be presented in the meeting of the National High Command. So the External Secretariat is comprised of the people that are there, but also the provincial coordinators. So when we are going to call a National High Command meeting now, we will call all the provincial coordinators to come and give us comprehensive reports on what are the provincial programs and activities, so that we go to the National High Command with a consolidated report as to what is expected. Provincial detachments are the highest decision-making bodies in the province and will perform functions and tasks under the ideological, organizational, and political guidance of the National High Command. So, Comrade Convener of Gauteng, on page 34, it says the provincial detachment is the highest decision-making body in the province. So you must never put a full stop after that province there. It says the provincial detachment is the highest decision-making body in the province and will perform its functions and tasks under the ideological, organizational, and political guidance of the National High Command. So the province can't say no, what the highest decision-making body can't be told by anyone. It's under the political and ideological guidance of the National High Command. And it's appointed by the national officials, and we have the provincial convener, deputy convener, coordinator, deputy coordinator, organizer, deputy organizer, fundraiser, deputy organizer, and 2 MK members representing each region in the province, and provincial conveners and coordinators of the MK and youth leagues, and provincial convener and coordinator of the MK student movement. So in each sitting of the detachment, the youth league convener and coordinator must be in the meetings of the provincial detachment. Same with the women's league and the students movement. That is standard. And also the regional conveners and coordinators must be in the meetings of the detachment, so that there is seamless work that gets to be done. That the provincial detachment must have a minimum of 1 meeting every 2 months. So the of how we then get to, and you can't take decisions that contradict upper structures. That each member of the provincial detachment will be assigned a specific role and function of the detachment. And members of the detachments must be full-time residents of the province and also registered to vote in the voting district that falls under the province. So you can't be a leader in the Northwest and you don't stay in the Northwest. You can't be a leader in the Free State and you don't stay there. And provincial detachments, this is very important, on page 36, are not allowed to appoint and remove members of the regional and sub-regional detachments without written approval from the Secretary General or National Organizer. And this does not mean that you must not have authority over the lower structures, but the power over the lower structures can be on threats of removal every day. That we're going to remove tomorrow, we're removing Tswane. If you continue like that, tomorrow you're gone. So that is what we are preventing. We want to have an organization that is, and each province must establish coordinates work of the organization, and that the members of the provincial detachments can be deployed to representative bodies. The DSG is going to come later on to speak to the specific individual functions of the provincial and regional detachments. And let's pay attention to this regional detachment section. It says regional detachment is a coordinating organ of the organization and responsible for coordination and implementation of all organizational decisions, programs, duties and responsibilities at the regional level, which is demarcated through district or metropolitan municipalities. So do you realize that in the region, it doesn't say the regional detachment is the highest decision-making body in the region. It's a coordinating and implementation structure. That is what it is. Like when even later on we have deployed people into government, can make recommendations, but you can't take decisions and say that you have recalled the mayor and said, no, we have recalled the mayor, already we have sent him a letter of resignation. It's not a decision-making structure. It's a coordinating and implementation structure of the decisions that are taken elsewhere. But the region must meet every once per month. Region, because it's closer to the ground, must meet consistently in terms of the work of the organization. It is composed of the same top 8, but at regional level in terms of how it is. Then sub-regional detachments, also they are coordinating organs of the organization responsible for implementation and coordination. And they are demarcated through local municipalities or metropolitan municipalities, zones or sub-regions. And in the sub-region, it's top 4, it's not top 8. Altogether, comrades, it's top 4 plus 10 additional members. Top 4 plus 10 additional members. And they must have a proper gender balance, and they must have the representation of the women and the youth league as well. And the sub-regional detachments are appointed by the National High Command after consultations with the province and regions. So even when you have identified I will know that in Gauteng, now that we are going to establish the regions, the immediate task will be to establish sub-regions on the zones. So the comrades who are leading the zones here in Gauteng are not dissolved. You can't dissolve a structure without putting a structure elsewhere. It's not allowed in MK. So you can't dissolve and say there's a vacuum, even the women's league. When you are going to announce a structure, there must be something there, and then you only replace a structure that is there, even if it's parallels. You can't announce for dissolution of a structure when you're not announcing. That is why before we could announce the MK Women's League, we could not derive on many women's formations that were existing. We dissolved them when we appointed the national convener and coordinator. And that is what they will do in terms of provinces as well. The provincial structures only get dissolved when you are appointing a new structure. Same with the zones and the sub-regions that you are going to establish structures on. And in majority of times, you must integrate the comrades that are already there and doing work, and not come with a completely new arrangement in terms of how sub-regions are constituted. And you can't sign appointment letters of the sub-regional structures, a comrade convene. We will have to be involved at a different level. And members of the sub-regions must be registered to vote and residing in those sub-regions. So don't allocate someone who stays and is registered to vote in Midrand and say, I grew up in Soweto, and then say I'm going to make it to lead the sub-region in Soweto. No. We want people who stay there and are registered to vote there to be leaders of that particular sub-region. Are we together, comrades? So that is what should apply in all the areas. So even if there's a comrade from Gekling who stays in Rustenburg, he can't be appointed in a Gekling sub-regional structure, Comrade Moots and Comrade Boss. And then they said, no, but my family home is in Moses Kotan. But I stay in Rustenburg, and then you want to make an in Moses Kotan. Who comes as a visit, as a tourist? And when it's getting late, says, comrades, I have to leave now because it's getting dark. A sub-regional convener says, I want to go home now because it's getting too dark because I'm staying very far. So the sub-regional leaders must necessarily be staying in the... and then the ward detachments of Umkhonto Wesizwe are comprised of ward convener, ward coordinator, ward organizer, ward fundraiser, and all voting district coordinators and conveners. The ward convener, ward coordinator are appointed by the region in consultation with the sub-region, and only after VD detachments in a ward have been established and appointed. So we establish VD-based branches before we establish the wards. Are we together, comrades? We are avoiding a situation if we start with ward-based structures. You know, all of us who come from the rural areas. You will have a skewed branch which exists in one VD. You find that the entire leadership of the branch is from one VD. And then there is 4 other VDs that are not taken care of. So we start with the VDs, and then we have the ward conference, which we'll now have. And the meeting of the branch at any given point must have the VD conveners and coordinators. VD-based branch is what we need on a permanent basis. Elections are run at VD level. If you have run elections before, you will know that if you don't have presence in VDs, you will never have any impact. Zero. So the nerve center of Umkhonto Wesizwe, the basic unit, will be the VD-based branch of Umkhonto Wesizwe, which is the most basic unit and must have a minimum in page 40 of 50 members, led by a VD detachment, and must meet weekly. And the VD-based branch must always have a copy of the voter's roll and always engaged in voter registration campaign to register those who are not registered to vote, and must always have constant political discussions, and must always train members of Umkhonto Wesizwe, and must circulate the media statements and communiques of the organization in the WhatsApp groups of the VD. So the internal communication structure, Comrade Lou, of Umkhonto Wesizwe, you must know that once the head office makes a communication, it goes to provincial detachments, regional detachments, sub-regional detachments, ward detachments, VDs, and then the entire membership internally. There must be common understanding of each and everything else that we stand for as an organization from top to bottom. That is what the branch is. And then once all the VDs are constituted, we will then have a ward detachment, and then we'll have a guideline later on the selection of councillor candidates for elections and how such is going to happen. Section 8 establishes Umkhonto Wesizwe Women's League, which is a relatively autonomous organization of Umkhonto Wesizwe, and its aims and objectives will be mobilization of women behind the ideals and vision of Umkhonto Wesizwe. And it's open to all females above the age of 16 years. And it's under the full political, ideological, and organizational guidance of the MK. So that autonomy, comrade convener, is relative. It means that you don't have full autonomy. The autonomy means that you are under full political, ideological, and organizational guidance of the MK. That is what it means. That you are a structure, like a province of Mkhonto Wesizwe, the organizations. The autonomy is because you can have your own conferences and own constitution and own mechanisms, but you're under the ideological and political guidance from Mkhonto Wesizwe. And then that Mkhonto Wesizwe Women's League advocates for the rights of women in all spheres of society, in the economy and decision-making structures. And the national leadership of Mkhonto Wesizwe Women's League is called the National Women's Detachment. The provincial leadership of the MK Women's League is the Provincial Women's Detachment, Regional Women's Detachment, Sub-Regional Women's Detachment, Ward Women's Detachment, VD Women's Detachment, if the branches are going to be existing parallel and mirroring Mkhonto Wesizwe in terms of the organizational composition. And that all members of MK Women's League must necessarily be members of Mkhonto Wesizwe. So you can't say that, and I only joined the Women's League. This one of the motherboard is not my thing. It's not allowed. So for you to be a member of the Women's League of Mkhonto Wesizwe, you must also be a member of the MK. Mkhonto Wesizwe Youth League is also a relatively autonomous organization, and its aims is mobilization of young people behind the ideals and vision of Mkhonto Wesizwe. The age category of Mkhonto Wesizwe Youth League is 13 years to 30 years, meaning that those who have marked the 31st birthday will not be members of MK Youth League. That must advocate for the interest of young people in society, in the economy, and all spheres of society. The national leadership of MK Youth League is the National Youth Detachment. The provincial leadership is Provincial Youth Detachment. The regional leadership is Regional Youth Detachment, Sub-Regional Youth Detachment, VD Youth Detachment, Ward Youth Detachments in the levels that are going to mirror the structures of the MK Youth League. And number 7 on page 43, it says, Mkhonto Wesizwe Youth League is not permitted to launch campus-based branches in institutions of higher learning, because that will be the terrain of the MK students movement. So you can't go and launch a branch of the MK Youth League in a campus. That is exclusively for the MK students movement. And MK students movement is a student wing for TVET colleges, universities of technology, for Mkhonto Wesizwe. And it is fighting for student interest. And the leadership of Mkhonto Wesizwe students movement, it can be joined by anyone, by any age. Even 60-year-old student can join MK students movement. But its leadership must not be above the age of 30. That is what the Constitution says. Its leadership must not be above the age of 30. The Constitution of Mkhonto Wesizwe says. And then Section 11 establishes the Constitution, the Code of Conduct of Mkhonto Wesizwe. That there is a disciplinary code of conduct which outlines the conduct that is expected from members. And then there's a guideline for public representatives as well. And that any member of Mkhonto Wesizwe who takes the organization to court without exhausting internal processes as outlined in the Code of Conduct will be automatically expelled. So if you go to court to challenge decisions of Mkhonto Wesizwe, you have already defined yourself outside the Constitution. Now, comrades, although this Constitution is detailed and has been adopted by the National High Command, in a defined process outlined by the national officials, National High Command, and the President, the Constitution can always be enriched and amended. Are we together, comrades? And there's a process that is outlined there, that it is adopted by the National High Command, and the Constitution can be amended and sections added through the National High Command of Umkhonto weSizwe. And when amendments are made and new sections of the Constitution are added, the National High Command will inform all structures through the official, internal, and external communication platforms, and the amendments be applicable from the date of the publication. So, since its adoption, there's not yet been an amendment, but in a guided process, in areas where we think we can enrich the Constitution, we can be able to do so. So that is basically what we had to come. That is the end of the Constitution of Umkhonto weSizwe. The DSG is going to come and present the code of conduct and the roles and responsibilities of the detachments. Thank you very much, comrades, all of us. Let us continue to fight for the movement. Amandla! Gwaza Mkhonto, Gwaza! Gwaza Mkhonto, Gwaza! Jigijela Mkhonto, Jigijela! Bathule nje baziqiniso awulendawo bathule nje baziqiniso awulendawo awuskokhele mshengeze awulendawo sikukuyo bathule nje baziqiniso awulendawo sikukuyo bathule nje baziqiniso awulendawo sikukuyo baphethe zibuthuliwe awulendawo sikukuyo baphethe zibuthuliwe Thank you very much, DSG.
Thank you very much, Secretary General of Umkhonto weSizwe. Can we give him a round of applause? Why not a standing ovation? Why not? Why not? Why not? I'm waiting for those that did not hear me. Get ene asumeni. Ngicela asumeni. That is to our Secretary General. Thank you very much. Siphethu nobhala. Siphethu nobhalo ne-content. Siphethu nobhala. Siphethu nobhalo ne-content. Siphethu nobhala. Siphethu nobhalo
Tina siphethu nobhala Tina siphethu nobhala
Siyabonga kakhulu Nobhala wethu. I am now going to take clarity seeking questions before we allow the Secretary General to take us through the Code of Conduct. May I have a hands? I'm going to count hands. First round of hands. One, two. One. No, I'll be taking hands per numbers. First sentence is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 8 hands. I will then request that you present your question, introduce yourself, and then present your question. Thank you.
Morning, commanders. Morning, our NHC and our provincial leadership. My name is Bongile Machabe Msomi from Johannesburg Region Zone 11. I have 2 questions. The first question is about the democratic center. Yeah, centralism. I'm gonna get the hang of it. It's a tongue twister. Our constitution talks about consultation. I would like the NHC to elaborate or define consultation regarding that aspect. The second one is the VD-based branches. In some of our areas in the suburbians, I see the minimum membership with the VD-based branches is a minimum of 50 members. In some of our in some of our areas, our VD is like 2 or 3 streets. Like for example, I stay in Pasona Vista. To get 50 minimum members on the VD, it's a bit difficult. So I would like to know, is there exceptions on the constitution? Thank
Amandla, my name is Tumelo Mlangeni from Johannesburg. The first question is, out of how many points will we be writing the exams after this induction? And then the second, the second question is on accountability in terms of organs and structures. Do the structures or the organs of the organization report to the structures? An example for an example, a youth league in a provincial detachment, a youth league provincial detachment, in a meeting of the provincial detachment, does it have a standing item, for an example, to report on its programs? Yeah, that's the only question.
Thank you very much, SG, National Organizer, the DSG, and the members of the National High Command. My name is Mpho Morolane from Tshwane. Mine is more the composition of the provincial detachment. And I'm referring to page 35 on a sentence that goes as follows, that 2 MKP members representing each region in the province. Interpreted differently, the implementation of it might be different in different provinces. So just clarity, because we don't want a situation, Commander Pamkan, where Commander Abel Tau is attending this week's session of the province. And the following week, when the other comrades attend, then we're debating. I think there must be clarity as to who in particular when we say 2 members coming from the region. Thanks.
Let's be. My name is Masai Freedom Tsuga from Citibank. Mine on page 13, section 4. Do you understand and respect the part of dual membership as an individual? It was stated, I joined the MK party alone. But when it comes to participation, moreover on the zones or at the VD, for becoming the leadership or maybe to be appointed, they normally put like Tate Muruti. When you are Muruti, automatically your wife is Mamuruti. So is it the recommendations when it comes to appointing substructures at the sub-regions that we have to look as an individual, not as a family? If I'm married to Ubaba, he's active. He's allowed also to be a member, or maybe he's serving as an MP. That line, it has to also be outlined so that people can understand that we are joined as individuals as it covered under section 4, which is D. Then on dual, okay, it's dual membership. The part of the Council on Traditional and Religion, as you indicated, they are coordinating the meetings. How are they going to do that? Are they going to inform the sub-regions or the regions to attend a certain meeting? Are they coordinating that? So I missed the part of the directive or the line of communication. Thank you.
Mandla. Mandla.
Ngathi sothukile protocol observed. Manibulise nobhala on a content. Ndibulise isiceba sakho sonke no bishop, commanders, commissars, women and the youth. Dinento zintathu nje mhlekazi wami. Eyokuqala uthethe waze wenza umzekelo ngeKZN. Sinento esinayo apha like ioffices umzekelo ndizawuthethela iSidibeng or uVictor Kalobi from Sidibeng region under the Lisedi sub-region. Sine office esinayo pha eSidibeng. The last time I checked, beubabati the legislature organizer the office. So I want to now understand xa ifika apho ukuthi izawuserva as i-office yomkhonto wesizwe controlled by the National High Command okanye izawuserva under the legislature or provincial legislature bese siba nenye office yomkhonto wesizwe. I wanted clarity there, and if then you are not aware of that office, bendifuna ba ujonge leyo part ukwenzela ba singa end up sesifaka abantu kule office and then sibe sengxakini. Ayikakavulwa yona, kuthiwe irent ibhatelwe from last year, did Bishop fully furnished inhle right, but ke bese senzela ukuthi take note of that. That's number one. Number two, when it comes to the DC committee, sicela ukwazi ke ngoku, let's say a member is behaving in a manner that deserves a disciplinary hearing. So that member uyenza le nto leyo in a sub-region or in a branch or in a region, what should be or what is the process to follow? If then you receive that report as a regional secretary or the top 8 of the region, do you then send it to the provincial detachment and then the provincial sends it direct to the National High Command? I want us to have a clear indication and understanding when it comes to that, so that singa end up mhlambi sijumpa siye to the National High Command kanti bekumele mhlambi siqale regional kanjalo steps. And then eyokugqibela yile bengicinga nje ngafumana clarity kule yama appointments wama coordinators, VD coordinators and branch coordinators. You indicated that that will be the prerogative of the regional leadership in consultation with the sub-regional leadership to appoint the branch coordinators and conveners. So bengicela nje clarity up kwenzela uba sibe clear. Enkosi Mhlekazi.
Sanbonani, my name is Notando Manana. I'm the queen of Amandebele from Manana's Kingdoms in Mpumalanga. I'm standing on behalf of PACTA, is the Office of Amakosis at Midrand. For entire South Africa, Amakosi wonke, aphuza khona amanzi lapho. Ngiyabonga kakhulu, ngibingelele i-leadership yonke ama-SG, bonke inkokheli zethu ngiyabonga. Commanders, there is something that is not going well. We are not working hand to hand namakhosi. And kunento ngahambi kahle kakhulu ngendaba ukuthi asihlonipheki noma singena kuma activities akhona singena kabuhlungu asina access yongena. I remember last year when there was an anniversary at Durban, we denied access to get inside the stadium. Amakhosi wahlala ngaphandle. Cabanga all the way from Mpumalanga abantu abadala bafike bahlala ngaphandle. Even today, this thing was happening again. Sicela ukuhlonipha singamakhosi. Second thing, thina makhosi sisebenza kanzima kakhulu, siyakhona ucampaigna isizwe siphethwe yithi emahostela sikhiphe bonke abantu, sidlala big role la kumkhonto. Siyacela kakhulu ma-commanders, sicela ukuthi kuleyo ndawo kube nokusebenzisana kahle. Ngoba ngiyabona ukuthi lento izomosha i-communication angeke sahambisana kahle. Kune complaint ekhulu esigodlweni. So ngiyabonga kakhulu, anginankulumo eningi. And ngiyabona futhi namanje uqaliwe futhi kwenziwa ama-detachment, ama-position. But there is no one from Royal House occupy a position. This thing is paining me too much. Thank you.
Amandla. Mina ngizwana amandla amancane commanders. Amandla. Commanders, igama o remember Junior Shilubane, commonly known as Commander Flag. Ngi deputy coordinator of Umkhonto Wesizwe Youth League in Gauteng province, as per detachment. My question is based on two sections, Section 5A and Section 9 of the Constitution. Section 9, subsection 2 says the Youth League is between the ages of 13 to 30. Then subsection 8 says that all eligible members of MKYL are obliged to be members of Umkhonto Wesizwe. Yet Section 5A of the membership says that you need to be an MK member, to be eligible to be an MK member, you need to be 16. So there's a 13 years that you need to be a youth league, but before you become a youth league, you need to be a member. But to be a member, you need to be 16. So we need to understand that part, which is which. I salute and I submit.
Amanda, how are you too? My name is Azania Khwari. I'm from Sidibeng, the fundraiser of Gauteng province by the detachment. Mine, it's on section 3. As the fundraiser, I'm speaking on issues of money and these things. On section 3, on item 4, it speaks about reclaiming the land and natural resources. SG, we have a problem. When you go to debate, we meet our peers. We must understand, please, can you at least try to elaborate on us who say that, what are the mechanisms that we are going to use in terms of expropriating land? After expropriating land, is the land going to the government? And how is it the land is going to be distributed? In terms of avoiding one person having 5 farms, 6 farms, going back to the system that we're trying to run away from in terms of reiterating of one system. We're taking land back, after that we're giving it to black people, but doing the same thing that the whites are doing it. Also on issues of minerals and resources, we also want to understand what are the mechanism is that the resources are going to be owned by the land, and how is the people of South Africa going to gain in those minerals when they are owned by the government, the materials that we're going to, mechanisms that we're going to use. Because of, you get into a debate, you speak about this thing, your peers clobber you because of they understand the mechanisms of their organizations. So in terms of mechanism, we want to understand also on part of creating employment, because of when each and every organization speaks about employment, creating jobs, how, what are the direct processes or policies are we going to use in terms of creating sustainable jobs, sustainable employment? The mechanisms in terms of who is equal, the teachers, doctors, and so forth. What are the mechanisms that we are going to accumulate for them in terms of everyone will receive a sustainable job? Thank you.
Yes, yes, the first round of 8. Can I see the second round?
Kwaza Mkondo, Kwaza. Thanks TSG, all protocol observed. I just want to get clarity on section 10 and section 9A. It's section 10, section 9A and section 10A. I'm going to read on this part, TSG, and I'm going to focus on the confusion that is creating in my mind. It says which is demarcated through local municipalities or metropolitan municipalities zones. And then this side, it says which is demarcated through district or metropolitan municipalities. I just need a clarity to understand how does it go, because in other especially the district, I have not seen the municipality demarcating the zones. So how are we going to address it in that way? Even at the metro level, I've never seen the metro demarcating zones. It's only demarcate the sub-regions. So it's really confusing. And I also request the DSG to maybe explain think it's a what base, what detachment is clear, but it's not clear on the number of the. No, it's a branch base. It's not clear on the organigram as to who's going to, how many conveners or how many. I mean, the designation of the people that are going to lead the VDs. I just need to get clarity. Unless if it have, I did not hear that part, I will apologize. Thanks.
Jikijela mkhonto jikijela. Jikijela mkhonto jikijela. Greetings to the National High Command and all other structures and to the commanders present. My name is Dumsantuli, originating from the Ekurhuleni Southern South region. I want to speak, SG, to the items that the Constitution is silent on. It doesn't tell us the guidelines on the workings of the detachments. For example, it is silent on the quorum of the meetings. I think this could come to be a bone of contention later. Secondly, it doesn't say who's eligible to vote on those meetings, especially when it is an extended meeting. It doesn't say those people who are ex officio, are they eligible to vote on those meetings or not? So probably we don't need clarity on those. The other item I will request a clarification on. There's a document I read as you are setting up these structures. You've just given us the Gauteng Provincial Detachment. There's a document on the Constitution, on the detachment, it says there should be a provincial chief administrator. But we also have within our caucuses, we've got chief of staffs. But if you check the document with the duties of chiefs of staffs, there's a contradiction between the duties of the chief administrator and the chief of staff. Because the chief of staff is supposed to serve at a legislature level. But you find him now having duties to run and organize for the party in competition with a provincial administrator. And also, the employment of the chief of staff and the reporting line, because it says the chief of staff's report to the SG. Now, how do you expect the provincial detachment to manage the person who does not report directly to them and reports to the SG? And the last one, Victor Lobby spoke about the city being office. Yes, it exists, but we are also finding out those leases that are taken through third parties, are not taken directly by MK. Somebody went and leased and came back to lease to the MKP. Now, when you request those lease agreements, you don't get documents. We are told about POPIA Act. Yet, you are a responsible structure. And that is caused by how we've written the documents, where you have one person in the province reporting directly or calling directly to the National High Command. It makes the work of building these structures very difficult. Thank you.
Sipilele nxamalala sipilele. Amandla. Thank you very much, leadership. Greetings to the national leadership, provincial leadership, and all protocol observed. Leadership, mine is a simple question. I've been largely covered by the leadership here next to me because I also wanted to delve on matters of accountability concerning reporting because one would have an understanding that deployees of the organization need to report to the structures of the organization and also take mandate from the structures of the organization. So the leadership, I think, has largely covered me there. So I only have one question right now, which is to say, concerning the duplication of roles or duplicated roles. For instance, the constitution does allow the leadership here, which I'm leading with as a member of the provincial youth detachment, to become also a member of the youth league. Now, is it possible that she can become a provincial leader of the MK Youth League and also that of an MK Women's League? Is that possible? So that is those are the only questions that I have, leadership. Thank you so much.
Malibongwe. Thank you very much, Chair. My question is on section 7.6E, and it reads as follows. At any given point, females should constitute not less than 40% of the overall collective of the National High Command, with the objective of achieving a minimum of 50% representation within 5 years. My question, SG, is that in terms of the provincial detachment, regional, right down to the ward level, does that apply, or does it only apply to the National High Command? And if not, then when will that then be implemented or introduced into those structures? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ala, and the collective. Leadership, mine is very simple. Nkulume. Thank you. Okay, thank you. So, mine is simple. Before elections, May last year, President Zuma, sorry. Okay. Igama nguMbekezeli Isibongo wakamlilo from the Greater Johannesburg region. So before May, President Zuma wayethe kithi indlela yokulwa isishintshile is no longer like ekuqaleni omkhulu abala ngomkhondo kwalendela iMK the military wing la emele khona ilwe ngesibhamu. Wathi esethi isibhamu manje is the vote. So mangiya lapha ku section 3 ukhuluma ngama aims and objectives of the party. Mawuya lapha ku number 6 now uyasho ukuthi one of our aims and objectives shall be to democratically and decisively take over political power in South Africa, which will be used as an instrument for total freedom and emancipation. But then now, as we speak now, we are still hanging in chains. The will of the people was suppressed through thuggery means. Njengoba sazi ukuthi amavutho MK antshontsho. But then now the process esayisebenzisa to fight was the democratic process. Icase ike president icase kuyimanje if ukuthi South Africa or South African judiciary is not being addressed or is not being ruled in a fair manner, iyothathwa isiwe kwi-IEC. But the IEC now, we are not really guaranteed with it, because the very same IEC once issued a warrant of arrest to our one and only Ali Putin. So we can't be guaranteed in terms of what if case to nakona mayifika iyofike iwin. Yes. 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 Okay. Okay. I'm still within the part. Okay. I'm coming. All right. So being subject the scenario of the President Putin, kuyela kwaba khona even the July unrest when the issue in the way which President Zuma uyoboshwa kwadeploywa amaphoyisa kwathiwa once those people who were there outside bazama anything yokuthi bavimbe ukuthi angaboshwa. Yes. Okay. 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 Njoba uthi ke leadership sothi manje kwamele sisebenzise the democratical means to actually take over political power in South Africa. Is it sustainable now? Le fight city sesilwa ngevote if they are able to rig elections, if they are able to manipulate the voting system, how guaranteed are we ukuthi the manner in which we are fighting is osnika the freedom that we want? Thank you.
Amandla. Malibongwe. Wathinta abafazi. Wathinta imbokodo. Commanders morning. My name is Ntombi Futhi Vilagazi. I am from COJ, Ward 41, Soweto. I have concerns. There's a section there in the Constitution that speaks about signing powers. And I realize in the last paragraph it says it's either the President, Secretary. My concern is mainly around where it says any member of the staff can be given signing powers. I think that makes me anxious in a sense that I don't think anybody who is a staff member can carry so much responsibility. And when it comes to financial decisions, I think that for me, my suggestion, we not maybe in how we term that line to say in the absence maybe of the secretary and the president, temporarily, short temporal signing powers can be assigned to a staff member. Concern, I don't know, I need to on this one because I think the flow of the Constitution is beautiful, right? And the ideas that are being introduced are fresh, they are fine, they are nice. But I would really like for you, SG in particular, to take me through maybe the thought of mind when we were drafting this Constitution. I feel like the and the national organizer, they are overlapping unless you were intertwining them. And if that was your idea, what is it that we are trying to achieve by having an official who is also kind of clubbed with another official? What is the thought behind combining the roles of a secretary and national organizer? Also, this is not a question, it's just a comment. I would like to also congratulate the new leadership in terms of gender representation. We all understand the last Buya corner, when MKP started, the national structures was purely and mainly males. I think from that time to now, we've seen progress. The appointment of DSG was a very beautiful, but also courage to understand out of another, we are down party. I appreciate, I'm so glad we got the women's is recognized as has a role, and maybe but it is as effective as everybody else. Can our gender not be our limitation? As time goes, I would really appreciate to also see young women swelling the ranks of high command and ama mother body detachment. We have a of people that is not considered. It's either you are over 40, you are over 50, but below that, we don't know where we are going. Not because we don't have direction, but there's a lack of direction from leadership. What happens to young men and women? I also would say I support decision to say over the age of 30, you are not youth. But also what that says to me is that over the age of 30, MK Party is saying they are ready. But they are ready for what when we are not being deployed anyway? There's a huge chunk of comrades and activists of MK Party who are over 30, who at some point were youth. I know it was not correct. We cannot compare the needs of a 16-year-old to that of a 34-year-old. Those ones are preparing homes, they are raising kids. These other ones need capacity building, support, education, training. We understand. So the separation was beautiful. But can we then be taking into your confidence to say, after you've chopped that chunk of very capable young people, what is the plan? What is the alternative? Is to send us to high command? Is to send us to government? Are we going to now start having shadow roles in the high command, so that I think before we are 35, we can also start being relevant and being used in spaces where we can be effective? Amandla.
Thanks very much. My name is David Nyembe. I am from Sidibeng region. Let me first welcome the presentation made by the SG and all protocol observed. Mine is only a clarity seeking question, perhaps here on the constitution itself, SG. I am referring in particular to section 4, subsection I, on knowledgeability and meritocracy. What I want to find out, Commander SG, is that here on our constitution says all members of MK Party must always seek to pursue further studies, including further diplomas and degrees. So as people that are deployed in different detachments, I just want to find out that is that a particular room or a provision whereby the MK Party will be able to, because considering the fact that we see what are the other NSFASs and the likes they are doing in terms of those that are seeking to further their studies, they are not considered. There will always be red tapes and all that prevents those that are willing to make education fashionable. We are prevented in making sure that we further our studies. So I just wanted to find out that as per the MK Constitution, is there any perhaps somewhere where we will be considered in being given these courses or to be sent to school in furthering our studies? So I submit. Thank you very much.
Thanks. My name is Opasos Komkwena from Eguruleni region. Mine is very simple, SG and the STTSG. With the notion of the sub-regional detachments, which is chapter 10, subsection D. I want to understand the notion that it says, when you read, members of the sub-regional detachment must be full-time residents of the sub-region and also registered to vote in the voting district that falls under the sub-regional zone. The question that I want to ask, there is a practice, it's a common practice, that you find that Opa stays, he has a house in Katlehong, and then he sleeps in Tembisa, but registered in Katlehong. So what is the mechanism that the organization is gonna give us in regards to the guideline to this subsection? Thanks.
Mandla. No, thanks, comrades. Comrades, these are, I think some of these issues are quite self-explanatory, but we will be able to clarify some of the issues. The question which Comrade Sosko is raising, if the sub-regional structures are going to be appointed by the region and the province, you know who stays where. It's just a basic principle that don't go and take people who don't stay in the sub-region and you want to appoint them as not into that sub-region. It's a guide, it's a basic process that in conducting our roles and obligations as the leadership, we must do so with honesty as well. That you must know that, but this comrade doesn't stay there and cannot lead the people of this constituency where they do not come from. So that is basic process that we have to deal with. In South Africa, we have got 23,295 voting districts. And only 134 have got less than 50 voters. We can listen to a special dispensation of VDs that say, yeah, we have got less than 50 voters. We therefore cannot constitute a branch. But a branch of Mkhonto weSizwe must have a minimum of 50 members. We are going to outline, the national organizer will speak to the guidelines which were adopted by the national officials. We did explain the simple process that the national officials exercises powers of the National High Command in between meetings of the National High Command and thereafter present a comprehensive report. So if you check in the Constitution in page 32, it says in K that the National High Command has the power to adopt guidelines and code of conduct which will be binding on all members of the organization. So from time to time, there is guidelines which the organization adopts. There is guidelines and guidance on the roles and responsibilities and functioning of provincial and regional detachments, sub-regional detachments. We have circulated that document. There is a guideline which we have circulated as well in terms of how the VD-based branches are going to be constituted without crossing the boundaries to what the national organizer is going to deal with. The national officials have said that in relation to VDs, we might need to allow the membership, because it's not a space or a sphere where we can face infiltration that we are fearful of at sub-regional, regional, provincial, and national level. That at VD level, we can allow for the election of the VD leadership through show of hands. That is in the guidelines which were adopted by the national officials. The national organizer will speak to that as to how such is going to be conducted in terms of the leadership. And it says in the Constitution that because it's a working meeting and a working structure at VD level, is convener, coordinator, and 10 additional members. So the leadership of the VD, it's convener, coordinator, and 10 additional members. Then they must meet all of them all the time. Majority of times, VD, in rural areas, a VD will be the village. In townships, it will be a section. And to have a meeting of the VD detachment, it's far much easier. It's far much easier to coordinate. Unlike a ward-based branch meeting, it's almost impossible in rural areas where even the public transport system only takes people from the villages to town in the morning and bring them back in the evening. And if the comrades do not have transport to interconnect villages, it's practically impossible actually. If you have stayed in villages, you will know that you can't have a functional ward-based branch, particularly for an organization that is at the formative stages. You can't sustain and handle a ward-based branch. So the VD-based branch is the best option that we would be able to have. The youth league. So the Constitution says all eligible members of the MK Youth League. So those who are eligible to join MK must join MK, are obliged to join MK. So those who are not eligible are not obliged because they are not eligible. So those who are between the ages of 13 and 15 can't join because the Constitution of Mkhonto doesn't allow. They're still in the preparatory stages. But once they turn 16, they are obliged to join as per the Constitution. So there will be a category of youth league members who are not members of MK, the mother body, because the age does not permit for them to join in that particular period. I think we've dealt with the issue of dual membership, that the dual membership can only be approved by national officials. So what that means is that if the organization discovers that you are a member of a different political organization and you don't have approval of such, you will be charged and be subjected to disciplinary processes, or be advised to belong to that organization only and not belong to both. Because now we're communicating clearly that let's be members of Umkhonto Wesizwe only. If you want to explain why you must join two organizations, you must be able to clarify that. And the issue is, each member joins as an individual. Even if you are a pastor or a traditional leader, even if you are Amakos, you can't automatically join other people. And you can't even join your wife. You join one person, and it's one person that gets to participate in the structures of the organization. You know, constitutions, comrades, are developed for certain contexts and environments all the time. That is why you have to amend them from time to time. Do you know, like, it's very sad because we'll have to give example with the ANC. They've had, what, 55 conferences now. All the 55 conferences have amended their constitution. All. There is no conference where they said, no, we're not touching it now. Because it must be adapted to changing circumstances. And then at formative stages, the MK, through the guidance of the leadership, says, let's have organizer, secretary general. It even mentions that it must write the following documents, which can only sometimes be written or developed once, and they're no longer going to be needed in the future. It's a contextual issue. But with time, you realize that these functions are no longer applicable in the future. Then you substitute that, and then you shift them elsewhere. So that is a contextual issue which you had to deal with a specific context in terms of how such was handled. a terrorist organization. That is what it is. That is why you are not different from Al Shabaab or Boko Haram. So, power you take on behalf of the people, not on behalf of yourself. If you want to take power for yourself on behalf of yourself, you are a terrorist. You are not a revolutionary. Revolutionary means you must be based amongst the people and everything, and there must be demonstration that the people are behind you in terms, and also the people will be able to tell you that this is what we have done, this is what we need to do moving forward in terms of those issues. I think there are many platforms, DSG. The designation of responsibilities of signing, I don't think it will be dispersed with that easily, by the way. Like they will never be, it will never be an easy process, but I'm sure from time to time the DSG or the SG can say, head of SG, this a letter which has to be appointed, can sign PP there, like, but it is still the SG must take full ownership of that. But it will not be an easy designation of those powers. And comrades, the representation of, so this is what happens with the provincial detachment. So it's the top 8 and then there's additional members. The additional members is not the same number of additional members the whole country. It depends on the number of regions in the province. Here in Gauteng, there is 5 regions, so there must be 10 additional members. They are permanent additional members. They don't represent and then go home and then they are done with it. It's permanent. Once they are appointed, they are permanent additional members. But we say to guarantee geographic spread and representation, those additional members must necessarily 2 each coming from one region altogether. And then that is one, but also the regional convener and coordinator still sit as the ex-officio members of the provincial detachment in terms of how the province is constituted. And that is how the provincial detachment is composed. I honestly think the DSG that there are issues which I think are organizational issues, which I'm sure we can address in a different platform in terms of offices and chief of staff and all of those. Those are organizational issues we're dealing, like those are contemporary issues that we have to deal with in relation to Gauteng. And because this issue is like this is recorded, and there was a comrade who spoke representing Amakosi, that is the only diversion we'll make. So this is what happens, comrades, when we got a report of, because we're not there and we're not there elsewhere, when we got a report of what happened in Orlando Stadium and what happened in Moses Mabhida, is that comrades go, or leadership of Amakosi go to the event and then they arrive at the event and say, we are the traditional leaders. You must treat us as such, and no one knows that. Objectively, like, the security works on the basis of the accreditation list that were given, or the people who confirmed attendance, and you just arrive and say, I'm a traditional leader. What criteria do we use to determine that this person is a traditional leader? And in the process, so the man, I think when we grow older, we will be able to have a much more reliable database of all the traditional leaders of Mkhonto Wesizwe, and so that we invite them and look after them and all of those things. But currently it's not practical what is expected. It's not disrespect of any traditional leader. It's just impossible, because a lot of people, are so many people who were not traditional leaders, by the way, who arrived wearing like their traditional leaders and wanted to enter the presidential suite. And then when you inquire where do they come from, you realize that even some of the areas they mentioned do not necessarily exist. So there is that dynamic, but we will deal with that aspect because we have now we're in the process of officializing the Mkhonto Wesizwe interfaith religious movement. We are going to form and guide an MK organization that focuses on traditional leaders only. We are going to do that, which is going to go toe to toe with Contrales. And in that way, we will then be able to know who is who in terms of traditional leadership. Because even this meeting is strictly a meeting of the regional structures of Gauteng province and then the provincial leadership of Free State and Northwest. So if there were Amakoso who arrived, there was miscommunication as to the composition of this meeting in terms of how, but if the participation rights were allowed, there is nothing wrong in terms of how it got to be handled in terms of those issues. But we will constitute that structure so that we have a structure that represents religious leaders and traditional leaders. When we go to have national events, there must be clarity of who are the accredited people and where are they going to sit and all of those things, so that there is no perception of mistreating any member of society. And the other issue, comrades, is that from time to time we will present the constitution. If there are issues that you don't understand, you will understand that in the next presentation. That is how organization gets to work. So you can't capture everything one day. You from time to time, you then say, oh, this is what actually this meant. Also, you will see when you go to the ground that this is how some of these principles get to apply to real circumstances. So you know, when we adopted the constitution, there was jovial mood, everyone else was happy in the National High Command. And when it began to take life, some people became very scared. They were saying that, hey, it looks like we need a Hoover constitution here. This one that we have, this one that we have is a bit heavy. And that is how constitutions are like. Like when you are working with it, you think it's just a paper. You will realize in action that it's a living document which regulates even your life. You will realize it's a living document which will even regulate your speech and how you conduct yourself. That is what it is. And you realize the real consequences of not living by the constitution, that you can realize that certain things can change completely if they're not complied with fully in terms of the constitution. But it's a document which is living, will always be amended, will always be enriched. And for a growing organization with brilliant comrades and activists and ground forces like MK, I can tell you that in the ultimate end, we're going to have one of the best organizational constitutions to guide our movement moving forward. Thank you very much, comrades. Thank you, DSJ.
Thank you very much, SG. I would suggest a 5 minutes body break, commanders. Just a 5 minutes. Thank you.